BG podcast number 71. We are live. Welcome to everyone. Can see a lot of the regular faces in the chat. As always, every Wednesday at 8:30, we do this live on the channel. Goes up as an extended video about an hour or so after we finish. So, evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it in the future after this has been uploaded to YouTube. First and foremost, let me start by giving a big thank you to everyone who tuned in to last week's podcast. Last week's podcast, the most viewed podcast we've ever done. We're probably about 20 views off doing 6,000 views on the podcast. So it'll be the first podcast we've ever done to hit 6,000 views. Obviously, boxing is buzzing at the minute. Lots to discuss, which is one contributing factor. Certainly another contributing factor is the 250 people who click the thumbs up button on that video. That's why we're getting so many new people tuning in and joining in what we do. So massive thanks to everyone who's supported it. And tonight is going to be another very, very busy show. We're going to start by looking back at last week's boxing. Obviously, a huge amount to discuss, ranging from Joyce, Ryan Burnett, Josh Warrington, Murat Gassiev. We're going to look at some of the news in boxing. Huge news that broke, a couple of hours ago. Huge news that James Degale and Lee Selby are working with Frank Warren and BT Sports. Obviously, we're then going to spend some time looking ahead to next week's boxing. We've got the final preliminary fight of the World Boxing Super Series, and most notably, we've got the Anthony Joshua pay-per-view card this weekend. So huge amount to discuss tonight. I'm going to try and move it at a rapid pace so we're not through for 5 hours. Also delighted to announce we have a completely full panel tonight. I can see we've got Jet, we've got Jay, we've got Tom, and we've got Paul returning. So hope everyone on the panel is well. And as always, thanks very much for giving up your time. Let's start with Jet. Jet, huge amount of boxing last week. Do you know what? I'm not going to talk through every fight with every panelist because we'll be here till midnight. But do you want to pick out some bits that you thought were particularly notable and certain fights that caught your eye, mate?
Yeah, I pretty much watched all the action from the weekend. I actually caught up with it this afternoon. Few of the most notable fights I watched. Leon Woodstock, I watched him. Zelfa Barrett, I watched him. Woodstock, a tough one. He does fight similar to Chris Eubank Jr., but I think he's a bit stuck in between a boxer and a pressure fighter. So he's good at this sort of level, British level. Craig Poxon, very, very very tough man, comes forward hard as nails. So good win for Leon Woodstock, but his ceiling may be a bit lower than first thought, I guess. Zelfa Barrett looked very, very good. He does this over elaborate sort of neck and shoulder thing, but if he can cut that out of his game when he goes through the levels, he'll be good. Gassiev looked really, really good in stopping Vlodarchik. First time he was stopped, actually. So Gassiev, very good fighter and excellent fight in the next, round of the semi-finals against Dorticus. So, I pretty much saw all the fights. Those were the fights that really caught my eye, to be fair. And, Jack Catterall, I watched, obviously, the Box Nation and the Sky Bill. So, Catterall won, obviously, the British. Didn't look great, but didn't look too bad either. So, yeah, that's probably the fights that caught my eye.
Cool. Let's talk about Joyce, because I know he's one that's inevitably going to come up as we continue through the panel. We were speaking off air. Jet, you mentioned you were a bit on the fence, so we say, on Joyce, having seen that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of you guys are were a bit higher on the performance. I know Lewison was, firstly, Lewison should have come in shape. He had 10, 11 weeks to come in, maybe 7 pounds lighter, I think was the figure. From the Dillian Whyte fight is very, that's embarrassing as a professional athlete. It's pretty poor. So you should have a go at Ian Lewison. He was game in there. Don't get me wrong. He was brave. I think he broke his ankle and damaged his eye or something like that. So did well. But Joyce, for me, he didn't really go through the gears. He was content to kind of box. Don't get me wrong, you know, the corner work from Ismail Salas was very good. He told him stick to his boxing. But I thought, you know, with the style that Joe Joyce has kind of implemented in the amateurs and WSB, I thought he would just put his, you know, foot on the gas and stop Lewison, because Lewison was there for the taking after round 3 or 4. You know, he was gassed, he was tired. He was injured after round 4. So, you know, Joyce did well, don't get me wrong. His jab was good at times. I think, you know, he was pushing his jab out at times. But when he got it going and he doubled up and he varied the jab, it was decent. But at times, you know, he just kind of pushed it and forced it out. His footwork was okay again in spots, but you know, it was a bit clumsy. I thought he wasn't necessarily off balance, but he just kind of his footwork didn't look, if you know what I mean. He was good, but you know, if some people are talking about unified heavyweight champion of the world in Joe Joyce, and I cannot see that. You know, he may pick up a weak version of the belt, similar to Parker, how he did against Ruiz or something like that, but or a regular or an interim belt or something. But to become how Joshua is or something like that, I can't see it. You know, it's not realistic at this stage of his career. I think he's turned over a bit late as well. You know, he's been in the amateurs for years and years and years. He's good. I just don't think he's going to be an elite heavyweight. Let's just put it that way. He might get to, you know, world level and have good fights against the top fighters in the division, but I don't think he's going to be beating the Furies, the Joshuas, maybe the Wilders. He might have a chance against Wilders, a bit defensively dodgy, but you know, the top guys of the division, I don't think he's going to really trouble them. Or he might have a chance, like it's just a puncher's chance, but even then he looked a bit some of his punches were pity patty in there. You know, he wasn't really putting any weight behind his punches. So I wouldn't say he's the biggest puncher as well. So very little chance against the top guys, I'd say, in essence.
I hear you, mate. I hear you. Okay. Would you agree that it's possibly the most impressive, you know, in a long period of time?
Yeah, I'd have to say, you know, in my lifetime, I'm probably the youngest guy here. So yeah, in my lifetime, definitely he performed well against, you know, Lewison for his debut. Don't get me wrong, but for the hype he was getting, I just don't think he performed that well. You know, he looked a bit predictable in there. You could tell what he was going to do before he done it, and I think obviously the better level of opposition. Don't get me wrong, Ian Lewison, his game, he's you know, he's hard as nails. Don't get me wrong, he you know, he performed to some credit, at least just taking the blows that he did. But against a better level of opposition, you know, we're talking obviously a top 15, maybe. I'm trying to think of maybe a Carlos Takam or someone like that. Obviously, I know he's fighting Joshua, but if he wasn't fighting him, he'd be a good test for Joyce to see where he was at. I know David Hayes trying to fast track him, but I think he'd struggle against someone like him because the jab is good, but he sometimes just pushes it out, and it's like he's just doing it for the sake of, you know, throwing out the jab, and some of his combination work wasn't the greatest for me. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh and a bit critical on him, but for a debut, it was probably the best I've seen from a British heavyweight in a fair while.
Yeah, and I think he's got his limitations. He's not the fastest. He may not be the biggest puncher. He may not be the most, you know, electric combination puncher, but he does some things in there really, really well, and really quite well indeed. And you know, I still think we've got. I know he's old. I know he's been in the World Series of Boxing. I know he's got the Olympic pedigree, but I still think he can improve an extra 5-10%. You know, when he starts to gain that pro experience. So, yeah, like you, I'm interested to see a bit more of him, I guess. Jet, before we move it on, can I have a word? I haven't watched the full Ryan Burnett fight just yet. The public consensus is that it's another scoring disaster. Can I have a word on that from yourself?
Yeah, not the best fight. Let's put it that way. It, it was it was kind of like it was just a wrestling match for the first, I'd say, 5 rounds. It was just Zanuck coming forward. He was piling on the pressure, and Burnett was just getting drawn into a scrap. And I was actually sitting it down watching with a few of my cousins, and I said to one of them, who's a very knowledgeable boxing fan, I said, if he does this against Zolani Tete, he gets eaten up, absolutely eaten up. You know, Burnett was he done okay down the stretch, but he's obviously unified champ. He's got a target on his back. I had it around 7-5, 8-4. I would understand, that sort of scorecard, but to have it 10-2 or something like that was a bit ridiculous. I thought the scorecards were a bit harsh on Zana, if that was the
I hear
if
one
that was the
of
case.
the judges gave it 11-1.
For me, definitely not. It's that definitely wasn't fair to Zana. I thought the first 3 or 4 rounds, he was pushing the pace, he was carrying he was carrying the fight, carrying the action, and Burnett was really struggling. I think in in the first 3-4 rounds, he just got caught up in a tear up for no reason. He could have stuck to his boxing, and there's a few guys on the Belfast card, I think, that did get caught up in a tear up for for kind of no reason. They could have stuck to the fundamentals. And Burnett, some people are saying in the chat, Burnett is a difficult guy to watch. He has some skill, but definitely not the skill that people thought he had when he turned pro. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they match him against next. But if it is Tete, I wouldn't want to see that knockout. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, would be very, very surprised if it was Tete. But you never know. You never know. But no, Jet, appreciate that as always. We'll bring you back in a little bit, mate. 100 of you guys watching live, 100 already. So thanks to everyone who's joining. Please hit the thumbs up if you are one of those watching live. Let's go over and bring in Paul. Paul, thanks for joining us tonight. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, let me just turn you up. Brilliant. We've maxed you out, Paul. So which ones of the fights did you catch last week, mate?
I saw some of the Burnett fight. I think I might have missed a couple of rounds. Saw Joyce. What else was on?
So there was a Frank Warren card headlined by Josh Warrington. There was Murat Gassiev. I think there was a little bit of action in Japan as well with Murata versus Ndan. But yeah, I guess Joe Joyce is kind of like the obvious starting point, mate. What was your take on him?
I was impressed with Joe Joyce, to be quite honest. Look, is he perfect? No, definitely not. Like there's there's holes in his game. I thought he got caught a bit too often by sort of like slightly wild shots that weren't particularly quick in their delivery, and I kind of think that he'd have to watch that, though he does seem like he's pretty tough. But on the whole, like for a debut, I know he's got a deep amateur record and stuff, amateur background, but for a pro debut, Ian Lewison was quite ambitious, and he busted him up, man. I mean, if you look at Ian Lewison's face at the end of that, I mean, I heard he broke his jaw. The guy's eye was closed. He was taking some real punishment in there. I was really impressed with the way Joe Joyce was sort of mixing it up with the jab. He wasn't just using the jab in one way. I like to see prospects use their jab in a few different ways. He was going to the body, he was doubling it up. He was. I think the other thing that is kind of a downside with him is his balance. Like sometimes he just seems, I don't know, he seems like he's almost got a couple of times he actually had to turn around completely 360 because he'd thrown himself off balance so much that he actually had to turn around to get back facing his opponent, which, I think that's, a potential problem. But for a debut, for a guy that, I know he's not a young guy, but for a guy that's a bit of a work in progress. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of upsides. I think there's a lot of good points to this performance. I haven't really paid much attention to Twitter or any of the other channels or anything to see how his performance was received. What did everybody else think?
My perception, mate, is that he actually hasn't been too well received by the general public. I think we're in an age now where the majority are Anthony Joshua fans. We also have a new clique developing, which is the obsessed Daniel Dubois fans. And what these people really, really feed off is, a heavyweight prospect coming out and destroying someone in 15 seconds with devastating power and athleticism. I mentioned I did the Joe Joyce video, and I don't even really think I mentioned Dubois. If I did, it was only in passing. And I got like 5-6 comments being like, here we go, boxing gossip, hyping Joe Joyce when you've got Daniel Dubois on the other side, and Dubois destroying people and he's not getting a comment, So it goes like that. But Ian Lewison's never been down in his professional career to date. Lewison's got an extensive and, real high-class amateur pedigree. And for me, the way Joe Joyce dominated him was superior to the way and I also think it wasn't just the domination; it was what he was doing in there. It was the jab, it was the engine. I thought he looked patient and calm and responding to instructions. I really liked it, I've got to say.
Yeah, I did. I actually was more impressed with Joe Joyce in that performance than I have been. Like I seen the Usyk fight in the World Series. I saw a couple of I'm not going to pretend to have seen him loads. See him a bit in the Olympics and stuff. That's probably the first time I've watched him and been quite impressed. I got to admit I was quite impressed. I think that would be hardest puncher in boxing, Daniel Dubois, that you're referring to there.
Yeah, hardest puncher since Mike Tyson, I think, was the quote, wasn't it?
Yeah.
After knocking out a selection of the heavyweight top 10, it's already in a position to announce him as that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dubois looks like a decent prospect, but people are just getting carried away. The people he's knocking out, he should be knocking out. It's as simple as that. That a lot of them are guys that have been knocked out before. A lot of them are guys that are substantially smaller than him, substantially sort of like lesser in skill. And we see it time and time again, don't we? Like someone comes up through, and they're a bit. We saw it with Joshua. It turns out, people were kind of right to a degree with Joshua. He's kind of gone on to prove himself a bit more. But I'm always reserved about that stuff because you just can't gauge very much from a guy that's knocking out. I don't like to call people bums and tomato cans, but I guess, it's the only, way to really describe some of these guys, that they just are lower class opposition. And let's wait until Daniel Dubois faces somebody that can, A, take a punch, and B, will punch back. And then we can maybe decide whether he's the second coming of Muhammad Ali. Until then, I think I'll reserve judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Dubois is an A-class prospect, and he will stay that way until he takes on somebody of some sort of note, and good luck to him. But what Joe Joyce has done is very, very different. He's come out and he's beaten an established contender at sort of British Commonwealth level, and he's beat him very, very convincingly in his first fight, and he's answered a lot of questions doing so. He's gone later in a fight. He's had some of those questions like that he's already answered that we don't have a clue how Dubois will respond to, or any prospect will respond to, unless they're asked them. So there you go. Paul, any other fights this weekend catch your eye that you want to mention before?
The Bernat Zakianov. I mean, I didn't see all of it, but I wasn't that impressed with Ryan Burnett. I don't know why, but he's one of them fighters that I think you guys, somebody touched on it before. It's kind of like some fighters, for some reason, and I don't always know why, I just struggle to get excited about. I struggle to sort of like find myself being really sort of like up for their fights. Certain fighters, when they're fighting, you're kind of like, you're pumped for it always. And certain fighters just not so much. And I don't know, it's a little bit lackluster from Ryan Burnett. Congratulations to him. He's unified a couple of titles down there. Thought Zakianov looked quite basic, and he was catching him a lot. It was quite brutal, some of it, and I know he was taken to hospital afterwards. Wasn't he, Ryan Burnett? They interviewed him afterwards with Adam Booth, and he was okay and whatnot. But I mean, I think it kind of like, what it tells me is some of the real killers down there will be just a step too far for him at this point. If somebody like Zakianov is that competitive. Did somebody say one of the scorecards was like really wide or something?
I think all three were, mate. I think one or two of them were 119, 109, and the other one or the other two were 118, 110. So they all gave it to. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I think they all gave it to Burnett by miles. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I think was it a 12-round fight. I think I maybe didn't see 1 or 2 rounds, but from what I saw, it was close. It was quite a close fight. I thought personally. I thought he won, but I thought it was a close fight. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with scoring in boxing at the minute. It's just it's one of those things that, I mean, if you look at this year has just been fucking amazing, man, boxing wise. But there's a fucking taint on it, isn't there? There's like the problems we've had with scoring and quite in quite big fights, the Ward, Kovalev, the ridiculously early stoppage, the ridiculous, Canelo, Triple G, and other examples of just that. For me, they've just tainted it a little bit. It's been an amazing year, but there's something wrong with the way fights are being scored at the minute.
Yeah. I mean, boxing's kind of been in the spotlight more and more this year because of some of the big fights that are out there. And really has been a pretty A-grade year in terms of the fights that have been made in world boxing. But how many times on this podcast have we discussed scoring? It's getting boring, and it's getting to the point where it's sadly kind of predictable, isn't it? It's you can really see it coming. You could even name the fights and the fighters.
Yeah.
Who it's going to affect, and that is, it takes something away, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of a problem as well for the growth of the sport, because like if a new person sits down to watch a fight for the maybe not the first time, but starting to get involved in it and whatnot, and they see what is clearly a close fight or even a fight that one guy is dominating, and then that shit happens. It's like, I think it could put people off, and it could really damage the growth of the sport, which worries me, if I'm honest.
Yes, yeah, I'm with you there. Okay, cheers, Paul. We'll come back to you in a little bit. Let me go over and bring in. Let's let him out of the cage, Iris, and then we'll come to Jay. Save the best to the last, Jay. Iris, give us a sound check.
Evening all.
Good, loud and clear, mate. So you were impressed by Joyce, right, mate?
Well, no, it just was exactly what I expected. I know you gave him a 40% chance, and I think people were taking the mickey out of you for saying that, because I think people just didn't interpret.
I gave Ian Lewis.
Ian Lewis had a 40% chance, but I think that people misinterpreted what you meant is that Ian Lewison would win. Would there be a 40% chance he'd win 1 minute of one round? So all those people are giving gossip. grief over that prediction. They need to cop themselves on.
Well, I think all those people need to take a back seat because I didn't get any congratulations for picking the right winner. I gave the winner a 60% chance of winning, and in a close fight that could have gone either way if it had gone to the cards. BG again picked the correct winner.
I'm telling you, there hasn't been a worse stoppage since. I'm trying to remember the last worst stoppage. Probably Cesar Chavez against Meldrick Taylor, because all the good work that Lewison put in just got wiped out by a fucking ref.
I'll tell you what though, joking apart for a second, I'd have stopped it way earlier, and if I was his corner, I'd have pulled him out. 3, 4, 5 earlier. Yeah,
like what was the point? I actually only got to turn it on at the end of the third round when I was watching it live the first time, and we saw the end of the third round and I was going, Jesus, he's really like...
Ian was absolutely electric in the first two, mate. You missed it.
Yeah, well, I rewatched it and you were right. He took 40% of the first two rounds.
Yeah.
First minute of both two rounds. But like myself and my missus are watching it, and then like after about 4 or 5 rounds, or like literally about 5 rounds, it's like, what, like why isn't this being stopped? Lucian's offering nothing, getting it beaten, and his eye was damaged, and I'm a boxing fan. I don't like watching guys get beaten up and not getting protected in the ring by the ref or their corners. Like Lucian's never going to win that fight. Look at the state of him. Seriously. I've seen, I made a comment on Twitter at the time, but I've seen, I've seen female boxers less in need of wearing a bra than Ian Lewison.
Yeah, as someone who was, giving Ian Lewison the chance in the fight and actually speaking very positively, I do have to say I was very disappointed when I saw that he'd weighed in at 19 stone. That wasn't going to end well at all at that point.
He didn't train for that fight at all. I refuse to believe he trained for that fight. I think he just took the money and ran.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but I think it's hard to believe that he, slogs his guts out in training for 3 months based on the shape of him. And to be fair, I thought he looked like he was blowing out of his arse after 2 rounds, to be frank, which tied in with the physical condition he was in. Unfortunately.
But to get on to Joyce, I think Joyce is a talent. He's awkward looking. That's the thing what people don't like, is that he looks awkward. But like I was saying to you before we started, like remember how everybody used to slag Tyson Fury for being an awkward looking mother?
Yeah.
Joyce has that awkwardness about him. But look, he's got a ramrod jab. He's got a very, very good jab. He's got great feet. He can move all night. He can punch all night. He can get in and out of there. He looks like he can take direction. There's something weird, like he's like an awkward. I heard Hatman talking about it, like he's just, he's so amateurish looking. But god damn it, like he's in there and he's pitching in at British level on his first fight. Like he would go in there against Sam Smith or Sam Sexton and or the Scottish the Highlander. What's his name?
Cornish.
Cornish, yeah. Alba Gabral, yeah. Like he would just like wipe them out. I'm not saying he would knock him out, but I think he would definitely just win those fights. He's a British level fighter already, and he's probably, I would put him in there against Hellenius. He would beat Dillian Whyte in the morning.
Yeah, don't you think he looks a lot better than Dillian Whyte did against Lewison?
Way better. Lewison, like in that Dillian Whyte fight, after about 5 rounds, it was a pretty even fight.
Yeah, Lewison was a lot of problems earlier, I thought.
Yeah, and it was the same condition that Lewison was in. And it's not like, Dillian Whyte's very overrated, and all these people talking about Joyce would beat Dillian. I would think he'd beat Dillian Whyte today.
I've got to give...
to put into context.
No, I hear you, mate, completely. I'm going to go to Team Groves quickly in the chat. At least BG embraced the 40%. Irish is still in denial about his pound-for-pound list. So there you go. Iris, let me ask you about the Frank Warren card. No, we haven't yet discussed the likes of Tyrone Nurse versus Catterall, Josh Warrington. Did you see those guys? What were your thoughts on their performances?
Yeah, I watched the Frank card. I thought it was a better card at the weekend. I watched. I thought, like we were saying beforehand, Poxton put up a great fight against what's his name again?
Woodstock.
Woodstock, and I think Woodstock. I was saying beforehand, I thought Woodstock was in for a hard fight there. I don't really rate Woodstock that highly. I think their scorecards in that fight were a bit disgraceful. Like, I don't know about anybody else watching that fight. I thought that fight, I could have given that fight 7-5 to Poxton, even maybe 7-5 to Woodstock.
Rounder, mate. Are you thinking 6-4?
Sorry, 6-4. Yeah, I would have given it 5-5, 6-4 to Poxton. Like, when I heard the scorecards that were coming in, like, remember, like when that was read out, when it finished, Poxton was jumping around like he'd won the fight. And Woodstock wasn't looking great. I think he got out of jail with those scorecards. I think it probably should have been a draw. He doesn't, sometimes these prospects, they think they're really massive punchers, and then they get to British level, and these boys are able to take their punches, and then they get found out. I don't think he's going to go too far. Tyrone Nurse, I don't know if anybody remembers that footballer, Danielson. He went in the early 2000s or something I think he broke the world record. He was like, one of these wingers who's so good, they try and beat the same guy 3 times. That kind of a winger in soccer. And then they lose the fucking ball. That's what Tyrone Nurse is. He's basically Danielson. He's got all the skills, but he just doesn't know how to use them, to his advantage. There's no point in going on the inside if you get dominated on the outside. If you're doing better at distance, he just is not able to. He's got the skills and he's able to do the things, but he's not able to implement them in a way that's strategic. So I don't think he'll ever get any better, because I think he likes being able to box in the pocket, and he likes being thinking of himself as a tough guy and not a boxer. And he should really combine, just use the things that work against the different foes. So Jack Catterall had won that easy to me.
At present,
I don't think Jack Catterall is in the same league as Josh Taylor, say, for example. Just different leagues.
Yeah, at present, I kind of view Tyrone Nurse as like more style than substance. And, as much as I like him, I now put him in the category of one of these boxers with like an Achilles heel or like a fatal flaw. You see some weaknesses in a James Degale or a George Groves, these boxers who routinely do the wrong thing in fights, and you think, right, they've got a big fight now, their flaw is so obvious, surely they're going to work on it, and they routinely make the same mistakes and have the same bad patterns in fights. And Nurse, for me, has become one of those, which is disappointing. Jack Catterall, interesting. You say he's behind Josh Taylor. Do you have him at a similar sort of level to O'Hara Davis, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that's a good fight. I think they're much of a muchness, to be honest with you. Maybe O'Hara beats him, but maybe Jack. I think Jack is a tough guy, and I think the thing is with Tyrone Nurse is that he's slippery and that he's tough, and that you're not going to stop. I don't know if Tyrone Nurse has been knocked out before. I don't think so, but I think that Catterall could stop Davis, but maybe Davis could stop him. But I think that Jack Catterall won't find it hard to catch Davies. But I think that's a good fight. Good domestic. It's the best division in domestic British in Britain at the moment. Warrington stopped your man Chalin. I thought he was pretty decent. I didn't watch it all. Warrington's pretty boring, but yeah, I thought it was a good card from Frank, though. It's his first good card in about 6 or 7 months. Ryan Burnett, he was I found it hard to watch. Man, he grabbed your man what's his name? Zakyanov.
Zakyanov, yeah.
He was grappling, and he was grabbing him by the opposite arm from where the referee was standing nearly the entire fight. We've had people complaining about Bradis. Man, fucking, Burnett, I thought he held an unbelievable amount without getting any warning or points taken off. It's hard to warm to Ryan Burnett. I think he's fairly good, but his style, it just doesn't do it for me.
I was going to say, sorry, the holding Endam this weekend, terrible. Absolutely terrible as well.
Did Murata stop Endam?
Yeah, he stopped him every time. Murata came forward and Dan just literally lunge in and hold him literally every couple of seconds. It was so bad. Like, I don't know how he didn't have a point taken off him.
Yeah. Well, at least that knockout and that reversal hopefully brings an end to that sort of Indam Murata saga, which was another bad bit of scoring in boxing. Tom, just before I move it on and bring Jay in, I do have to ask you about Murat Gassiev. I don't know if you saw him. I was very impressed. I like what I saw in Gassiev.
Yeah, just before Gassiev, the Murata fight was shown on terrestrial TV in Japan and had 30 million people watching it. You know,
Wow.
put the PBC and all those things into context. It shows you that boxing can be done on terrestrial TV. You know, it can be done in Germany, it can be done in Japan, two of the biggest boxing markets in the world. So not everything has to be pay-per-view. But, you know, 30 million, that's a hell of a number. This thing's the highest viewership of any program in Japan this year or something. So, but Murata, you know, he's a big dude, you know, for Japanese fighters. They usually don't go above, you know, you don't see them at the high levels above, God, I don't know, super fighter or something. But Gassiev, yeah, Gassiev's a killer, you know. But, you know, whether he can, you know, God, you have to give him chances against anybody. You know, you have to give him a chance against anybody. He is enormous, man. He's 23. People going about Luis Ortiz. My God, imagine he's 23. Like, he's got more facial hair on his lower jaw than I do on my entire body, and I have a beard.
Oh dear, yeah. He is 24. Not that changes the point, but I just thought I would mention it. Do you view him as like a sort of cruiserweight Golovkin in the way he sort of approaches a fight?
Yeah, well, he gets the same trainer, so it's an easy point to make, and it's definitely true. He's in there to knock guys out, and he's in there to cut the ring off. It's an attacking style. But, you know, he's far from Golovkin's skills. You know, I think he had 20 amateur fights or something. You know, he's had about 40 fights in his whole career.
Yeah, I think
Golovkin had.
You have to pick him to beat Dorticos based on that. Obviously, Dorticos is still a bit of an unknown fighter, but I would favour Gassiev. If he fights like an Usyk in the final, that will be the big test for him, because Gassiev, he is maybe predictable in his approach, and you know Usyk's going to be looking to keep him long and looking to dance, and you know that's going to be a real stylistic clash, Tom.
It will, but I don't think Usyk's been anybody in who's fresh and a killer. You know, he's been in with what do you call Sherry's man? Glowacki, yeah. He's been in with Glowacki and Hook. You know, they're the two he's been in with. But like, you know, Gassiev is fresh and he's a killer and he's big. So, you know, you'd have to have Usyk as the favourite to box him, but Jesus, you know, he didn't land too many shots in that guy. It was an uppercut and a left hook, and you know, he just iced him. You know, it was vicious.
Yeah, that guy is. I know he's in the autumn of his career, but that guy was notoriously durable. And it was with Gassiev. He just one of these guys. They weren't like haymaker punches. He just must be one of these naturally very, very heavy-handed guys, because they were kind of short punches coming from a few inches away, you know, to the body. He looks like an immense body puncher. I was looking back at his fight against Lebedev, and I saw he dropped Lebedev hard to the body there as well. You know, but he's a real talent. And as you say, Tom, at that age, he is a baby in the context of the cruiserweight division, I guess.
Julian Jackson was the same. A lot of his punches didn't look like they were swung from huge distance and whatnot. Very, very natural power, you know, like that's kind of the kind of power I think Gassiev has. It could be a short punch that, like, you know, 90%, 99% of boxers could throw and just not really affect the opponent, and he just like ices them.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see where he goes, to be honest. And you know, him versus Dorticos, they're both guys who I haven't seen a hell of a lot of, and they both impressed me. What I have seen, they're both, you know, these naturally heavy-handed guys. You'd be surprised if that made the 12 rounds, certainly. But yeah, this Boxing Super Series for me is getting more and more attractive by the day, I've got to say. Guys, let me go to Jay, because we've been live 45 minutes, and the poor guy hasn't even had a word in yet, which is no fun for him. Jay, apology. Delay, mate.
Well, gossip, it is the right thing to do, though. It's the right thing to do.
Fuck off, Irish.
And then only give him 30 seconds. I can actually talk for his 30 seconds if you want.
Don't get Irish, that's what you are. Knowledge is power.
Well, there we go. Jay, I've given you quite a build-up there, mate. Obviously, you've heard us discuss Joyce, Gassiev, Nurse, Warrington, Burnett. You know, where do you want to start?
I'll start with Joyce, I reckon. I think we just need to put this fight in perspective, really. I mean, when I first watched it, I watched it again, but the first time I watched it, I was really, really impressed. I was just like, that's probably one of the best debuts from a boxer I've seen. You know, he looked really calm, really collected. He moves really well. His footwork's really good. The other thing I would say about him, he tends to stand a bit square on at times, which, as any boxer, but especially heavyweight, standing square on is not a good thing, because if you get hit clean, that's not a good thing, and you're going to get put on your ass. I think he needs rounds. I mean, I don't know whether this was because he was throwing so many punches because there was nothing really coming back, but he did gas a little bit. He'd take time out and he'd walk off and he'd take a deep breather and then he'd go back to it. And maybe because of the amateur pedigree and the World Series of Boxing, you know, they're only shorter rounds, so maybe he does need the round. So my question mark would be over his square feet and his and I know that might be controversial, but I honestly think there was definitely times that he. But as I said, I don't know if it's been throwing so many punches and not enough coming back. But he did have to take. He'd stand straight and he'd walk away and almost look away and take that big breath. But put it in perspective, who was AJ's first opponent, Whyte's first opponent, Dubois' first opponent? They weren't Ian Lewison. At the same time, Ian Lewison was out of shape. Badly out of shape, but this is nothing we haven't seen before with him. I think he just thinks he needs to get him out there hopefully within 3 rounds, and after 3 rounds it's like hold on time sort of thing. But I think he did have a lot of injuries in his training camp going into it. There was issues with his ankles and that. So the good things about Joyce, he does look really awkward. He does swing for the hills a little bit and gets off balance, like Paul said. But, you know, again, in perspective, for a debut, you know, it's quite incredible that he's fought someone of Ian Lewison, even though it was an out of shape. But as you said, you know, that's top 10 British heavyweight level. So I think hopefully within time, with his trainer, he can develop a little bit and iron out those issues that he has. I don't think he's that heavy-handed. I don't think he's a big puncher. You know, he's not that knockout puncher, I don't believe. I think he's concussive, but he's not a big puncher, because you only have to look at the state of Ian Lewison's eyes. But it's going to be very different when someone's throwing back. But Ian Lewison, you know, he has good movement. He has really, for such an out-of-condition guy, he has really good head movement, and he moves his head quite well. But unfortunately, you know, a super fit Ian Lewison, which we'll probably never ever see, might be a little bit of a different challenge. But, you know, all in all, a good. I think he's calmness under pressure, under a live TV, and his first debut was what stood out to me.
I completely. He looked seasoned, didn't he? Which I guess is a product of the background he's had. Yeah,
but there is when Irish said, like, he does look amateurish. He does some really basic things really badly, which is, you know, surprising, and how far he's come and how well he's done, because he does have that footwork. He can move quickly, but not many big heavyweights can do. And like Tyson Fury is probably the only one that can really do it and not bounce around the ring. But when he goes forward, he does stand really square on and looks for that big left hand. So yeah, but only time will tell, really. You know, but it was a good debut, good, impressive.
Good stuff. What about the other stuff, mate? What did you make of the Burnett scoring?
No, the Burnett scoring was wrong, obviously. I'd agree with Jet. There was probably 5 rounds in it. 4, I'd probably say. I like Ryan Burnett. I think he's very good. I think style, doesn't he? that you can see in Groves and that you can see David Hay still have with that hand down low and the right hand up to his cheek. I think it can make it difficult for any fighter. You know, he has one way of doing things. There's no plan B. There's no plan C. He comes in, he follows his man, he tries to cut off the ring, he tries getting close and tries to do the work on the inside. So it's very difficult for any fighter to look good or look impressive against him. But I think Burnett showed his side of him that you don't see as much. That his inside work was good. His inside work was very good. And when he got the time, the distance, he could let off, and he let off some good 3-4 combinations. But Zakionov wasn't really allowing him the distance. He kept tight with him, kept pushing him, and it made it really messy. But, you know, when he was on the inside, Burnett, he tucked up really well and showed some good work on the inside. And something, you know, it's a fight that every fighter, you know, you have to go through different styles to get to where you want to be, and he got through that style, which is going to be difficult for any fighter, I think. But I think Burnett really showed, you know, that he does have that little bit of class, and he does. If you notice in flourishes when he got back to the inside and had the distance, he showed that real good technique that he has, and I like him. And I think I'll be in that division pretty much up there, really, if not number one, really. Probably Tete, you probably say, is the fight that you'd like to see. But McDonald, not so much. Japanese kid, what's his name?
Inoue?
Yamanaka,
yeah.
Yeah, you know, he's probably, you know, but he's on the slide. You know, Solis has got the rematch. Neri, there's issues, isn't there, with drug taking, etc. So, you know, he's definitely up there. He's definitely up there, and it's the division's there to be opened up, and you need someone to unify, really. So, yeah. Who else did I watch? I only watched the big ones. Gatsiev.
Josh Kelly, by any chance? Just because no one's mentioned him. Yeah. What's mentioned Ryan Burnett having that classic Adam Booth style. So there's a lot of that in Kelly as well, isn't there?
Yeah, but Josh Kelly takes it to a different level. I know against the opponent he has, but you know, it's early stages, etc. But Josh Kelly, I think fighters don't have. He has that little bit extra, that extra 10%. You know, he's so confident, unbelievably confident. Whether that's because of the opposition or I think Andy Lee said, you know, when he first came in the gym and he sparred with Billy Joe Saunders and Andy Lee, and he wasn't out of his depth at all. And I think that's right. I think he's something very special. I really do. You know, I think he must style himself on Roy Jones or someone like that. You know, the way he keeps his hands down, basically. You know, but then pulls out these shots from his waist, and he'll pull out a big hook or a big uppercut. I think he's really impressive, and I think, you know, he does have that style that Booth likes, and Booth will take those fighters in because he can see it in them. But, you know, Burnett and Kelly, they both have that style, but Kelly has something extraordinarily different, which is supreme confidence, good power, good reactions, good speed. He's got the package, really, and he's unorthodox, so it makes it very difficult for an opponent straight away, you know, because there aren't that many fighters out there. So when you step in front of him, you don't know what's coming and where it's coming from. You know, very much like Prince Nazim, you didn't know. He's so unorthodox but so effective, and you didn't really know where it was coming from, but impression him. And you know, he's only had 4 fights at the end of the day, so, you know, we can't get too carried away. But from what I've seen, he's definitely, for me, one definitely for the future. I think a future world champion, you know. But it's a tough division he's going into. But, you know, I think he's that good.
Yeah, he's going to be someone for me. He is either going to be a star or he's going to fail. And there's not going to be very much in between, you know, because the way he throws punches, the confidence he has, you know, the style he has, he models himself on Roy Jones, like you say. He completely negates any sort of classic boxing approach. And, he's either going to come up against someone like a gatekeeper world top 10 who's just going to punch him straight down the middle and time him and counter him, or and he's going to fall apart at that, or he's just going to be a class above with the way he uses his reactions and stuff. And looking at him, obviously it's very, very early stages, but he does look like one of these guys who can go through the levels to me.
Well, because he's so young, it's obviously a style that he's developed since he was a kid. So he's obviously probably been doing this for, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine he's been doing it for a very long time, and that takes, I think, a lot of boxing intelligence to be able to adapt that style and use it effectively. Not many, when you go and first to learn how to box, they'll tell you to stand in a certain way, put your hands up, put your elbows low to cover your ribs, that very orthodox style, so for someone as a youngster to basically throw away that book and go, nah, I'm not doing that, I'm doing it like this, it takes a lot of ability and a lot of boxing intelligence to make it effective. So, I just think he's one of those natural boxers, that can develop us. I'm saying he's copying Roy Jones Jr., but it's still of this era, very, very different to what anyone else really is doing, and it takes a lot of balls to do it. Right. Gassiev. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that Dorticos fight. That's going to be a proper war. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to go, to the end. There's definitely going to be a knockout. I mean, Gassiev, he has a really good ability to cut the ring off. He does cut the ring off really well, and he doesn't waste punches. I mean, if you watch those 3 rounds, I mean, you could have counted on 2 hands how many punches he actually threw. He doesn't waste punches. He keeps his guard nice and tight, nice and high, and he works everything off that double jab. It's double jab, double jab, double jab, double jab. And you can tell he's clever fighter because he's almost waiting for that opportunity. He's waiting for that gap, and when he sees that gap, he's going to go. But he won't gas himself out. That's a fighter that's never going to gas himself out because he's never going to throw that many punches. But that finish, as you saw, the first round didn't do much. Second round really didn't do much. Third round, until then, double jab, and then he come back, and then he stepped up with an uppercut, and then what I love, a gut buster, straight to the body, down, gone, finished. So he's obviously got power. He's a very different fighter to what else you've seen in this competition, which is very different to Dorticos for sure. So it's going to be interesting. But I know Usyk is probably the favourite, but those 4 last fighters, Dorticos, Gassiev, Bradis and Usyk, are all possible winners. On their night, they're all possible winners as far as I'm concerned. So
I find it hard to be Bradis win, if I'm honest. I think Bradis I view as sub-elite. I think Dorticos I view as a complete unknown commodity. And then Gassiev and Usyk I see as real top class.
Well, I don't know. I think Brady's on his day, everyone on his day. And on his day, I think he could go all the way. Usyk is very, very good. Again, he's very different fighter to everyone else in that competition. He moves really well. He gets around the ring well for such a big guy. Properly tested. And I think Brady's can give him a test. And we'll see, But, Usyk's the favourite for a reason, But I still wouldn't count out, any of those 4 making it through to that final at all. Well, obviously 2 of them are, but, in the context. And then I saw Murata against Ndam. Ndam was better the second fight than he was first fight. He's quite slick, Ndam. Really well. He's really quite slick when he wants to. He has issues with his gas tank, but so it kind of went the same way the first fight really did. Although there was no way Murata was gonna. You could tell as soon as he got into that ring, the first couple of rounds, you could tell he was not walking out without that belt. No way, because he was getting punched in the face and he was just smiling. He was just smiling and coming forward. He wanted that fight. He wanted revenge desperately, and he was willing to take punches just to keep pressure on, And you know, you could tell at the end, Murata was practically crying at the end when he won that belt, because you could see how much it meant to him, meant to his country, and you, as I said, there was no way he was leaving without that belt. No way. And justly right, he won, and I'm glad he did. I was very happy for him. That's about it.
Good stuff. Anything on the Frank Warren card before we move on, Joe?
You know, no, I didn't. I've been catching up, and I haven't caught up with the. I was just watching the Warrington fight, so I can't really comment on that bill at all.
I hear you, mate. Okay, guys, we've done an hour on last week's boxing, and we still haven't got into some of the real meaty topics. We're about to talk about the Degale stuff and Lee Selby, and obviously then we'll move on to the preview of next week with Joshua and Whyte and Joyce. Huge amount of boxing last week, so I haven't been able to go and ask the panel each individually what they thought of Josh Kelly, what they thought of Zelfa Barrett, what they thought of Leon Woodstock. Hopefully we've covered all the fighters in some form, however briefly. Let me just, before we move it on and carry on, guys, anyone on the panel got anything else they'd like to add about last week's boxing? Fantastic. Okay, in that case, let's move it on. And first and foremost, I want to discuss this breaking news that was coming out about 5 o'clock this afternoon. Frank Warren announced a big December bill at the Copper Box, headlined by James Degale and Lee Selby, both defending their IBF world titles. My understanding is, at this point, both of them are fighting opponents who are yet to be announced. Big news. Both of these guys have been Al Heyman fighters, but both of them have previously enjoyed a working relationship with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, certainly at some stage. Degale took to Twitter. Someone asked him what happened with Matchroom, and he retweeted and said, "Ask Eddie." In the last couple of hours, an extended Eddie Hearn interview has gone up on IFL TV, where the interviewer, Kugan Cassius, actually asked Eddie directly. He said, Degale has tweeted, ask Eddie, and he served up the question. I'd recommend checking out that interview after the podcast. But effectively, Eddie said that he couldn't really provide what Degale wanted, which was a big fight prior to Christmas, a big fight in December with their existing commitments. But what this does mean is another big bill in December. And what else this means is a big shot in the arm for a guy like Frank Warren and for the BT Sports journey that they're currently going on, because Degale and Lee Selby, for me, two of the top talents in British boxing, two established world champions, and two guys who, if matched correctly, can be in very big fights. I'm going to throw it open to the panel rather than one person individually, but what are people's gut reaction to this news?
I think it's really good, Frank. I'm really happy for him. Well done, mate. I'm really happy for him because he took so much stick from fucking Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. To pull these off, he's just a really good put. And I think it happens in boxing. Promoters come and promoters go, and some have all the success, and they die off, and someone else will come over, and it's a bit of a rewind for Frank Warren. I think it shows that Sky maybe have put bad cards on, but putting too many eggs in one basket, I think, around the whole anti-Joshua thing. They've built their whole brand recently of Sky boxing off Anthony Joshua. I don't think you can't do that. You can't satisfy boxing fans as a whole by building around one particular fighter. It's just not possible. And I think Frank Warren knew that he had to get big names in. With the loss of Tyson Fury, could have been his jewel in the crown. But with him out of the picture, Billy Joe Saunders, he pulled Josh Warrington, who's not going to be a crossover Do you know what I mean? But James Degale is one of those names that's very recognisable. He's well known. He's a world champion, and he's been in some great fights. Olympic gold medalist. You know, good in front of the camera to a certain extent. So yeah, it's a really good thing for Box Nation and BT from their perspective, not necessarily from mine, but from theirs definitely.
What do you call it? Sorry, do you remember when Frank got the BT deal and we were saying, oh, like, you know, you have to give it a few years to see what'll happen. But you know, like it shows you the difference that having a big backer like BT and all their millions makes. Like when those guys get into sport, you know, they throw their money at it. They throw the checkbook at it. They threw it at the rugby. They threw it at the soccer. You know, and now they're throwing it at the boxing. He's taken 3 big names directly from Eddie Hearn: Selby, Warrington, and Degale. And he's added Frampton, who used to be an Eddie Hearn fighter, if you want to put it, but that's a bit of a stretch. But
Eddie Hearn would have grabbed him straight away, given half the chance if he had the opportunity to do it.
Well, he tried to, apparently. So, you know, he's after beating Eddie to that signature. And, like, if you look at the actual stables now, you know, from such a position of dominance maybe 2 years ago, if you look, what happens if AJ gets injured for a year?
Yeah.
Who's in the Eddie Hearn roster? Who's actually a top fighter, not prospects, but who's actually there? You got Tony Bellew, who's on his, you know, he probably has 1 or 2 fights left. Who else is there? Kell Brook.
AJ gets beat.
And or AJ gets beat. Yeah, how would happen if AJ gets sparked? But like, let's say, you know, like if you know, you can come back from a sparking. Now Lennox Lewis did it. I'm not going to say that, but say he gets injured for a year. You know, that's nearly worse. Because then there's not 3 fights in that year.
It's a good point.
And who is it?
Turning.
Who is there?
Tide's turning. It's good for us as fans. That competition it can only be good for us.
But let me ask you guys a question. I personally do believe Eddie Hearn when he said that one of the things that happened here was Degale and Selby wanted to get out before Christmas, and he just didn't have the ability to put them on in the scale of fights that they needed to be in with that time frame.
But look, you know, when those fighters, they're the two. Sorry.
What I was going to say is, my understanding from what Jet told me is that these are not confirmed as long-term deals with Frank Warren and with BT Sports. Potentially, these are fight-by-fight deals. So let's say Joshua did get injured. Could Eddie Hearn simply offer a big pay-per-view date for either of those names? And would they then have to follow the money and be a bit cavalier about going back and forth between the two camps, dependent on what's available?
I don't think Degale would. Because Degale's had issues with Eddie Hearn in the past, and in fact, quite recently, there's been issues there, hasn't there? And sometimes Degale, some of the stuff he says in interviews, kind of like hints. If you don't say it explicitly, hints at kind of like issues, not feeling like Eddie kind of like pays him the attention that he wants and stuff. I think this kind of like the BT thing is going to attract a lot. I think there'll be more of this. Fighters sort of signing with Frank and whatnot. My only worry is that some of the promises he made, and I don't know whether there'd be contracts in place for this to say he has to do this, but some of the sort of like, what was it? Because I can remember when we were talking about this, what was it he said, like 30 dates a year or something? And we all said there's fucking no chance he's going to do that. Well, I mean, there is no chance he's going to do that, is there? Let's be honest. He certainly won't be doing it in his first year. So I don't know how it's going to go and how, because I always kind of like think of Frank Warren and Queensberry as a bit of a, I don't know, all of their productions just always seem a little bit lackluster, a little bit less polished than a Sky production, than a Matchroom production and whatnot. Even there, I can remember watching a press conference where the banner was falling down and stuff, and you know, you've got Billy Joe Saunders at a leisure centre and stuff like that. They're just a little bit less. I don't know. I've got a little bit less sort of like faith in Frank Warren's ability to pull off big things like that. I know he's been at it for years, but you know, years ago it was a different era, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think, Paul, that's where BT come in.
Yeah, you might be right. Right,
You know,
he's going to have to expand in some way, isn't he?
But
BT are going to know what they want, and I think, and with them, with you know, they're a full scale sports channel,
yeah,
and they'll know what sells, and they'll know how to put on a show, and what Frank Warren can clearly do, and he can go right. Well, look. And he can say to BT Sport at the same time, well, look, you know, we could get a pay-per-view Eubank, George Groves, Degale. You know, there's big money to be made, and they'll know that, and they'll throw money at Degale. And I don't think they would switch over to Sky Sports for money, because I don't think money's an issue now, because I think BT Sports can match money Sky Sports on that front, because they realise that a pay-per-view for Eubank or Degale Groves is huge. It's huge numbers. So there's no reason for him to jump back over to Sky. It's just, you know, I don't see it.
In terms of the money, so go on, Paul, if you want.
No, all I was going to say was, I just think at this present point, like right now, I think Sky is maybe seen as slightly. I know BT, I think they've got more money than Sky, but I think Sky is probably seen as just a bit of a more sure thing for fighters, because you've got, like, you know, you've got Sky Sports, you've got Sky News. When there's a big fight, they're promoting the fucking shit out of it on, you know, every 5 minutes and whatnot. And you haven't quite got that at BT yet. And so I think that might make certain people kind of like think, oh, fucking hell, it's better the devil you know, and just kind of like jump back that way. But I think you make a good point there, Jay, about you know what you were saying anyway. You know, it's a good point anyway. You know.
Tom, were you looking to get in there, mate?
Well, Jet was going to say something, was he?
Yeah, go on, Jet.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say the money side is a bit of a it's a bit weird, because obviously Degale's on the card, Selby's on the card, and I'm looking down the IBF rankings, the super middleweight rankings right now, and obviously the first few guys, Andre Durrell, Uskut's guy, they're fighting in an interim fight, I think. I'm not sure if that's still going ahead. Eubanks in the tournament, he's number 4. Rocky Fielding, I don't think will fight him. He's number 5, and he's with Eddie. Avni Yildirim just lost. Vincent Fagenboots, Caleb Plant, you know. I don't know who's Frank's going to actually bring over for him. And then if you switch to the IBF featherweight rankings, Selby, you know, the first guys, he's beaten Barros. Kid Galahad's not going to get in there with him. Warrington's the mandatory. Joseph Diaz is there. Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg, they're big fights. They're not going to get in with him. And then you kind of look like 10 to 15 are kind of, you know, lower ranked guys. He's going to have to fight an unknown guy, you know. So it's going to be more of a showcase fight, I guess. But it does good for Frank. It's just how the fights are, you know, who they fight, how they're perceived by the public, and if they know the opponent. You know, you see it on Sky. Paul makes a good point. They cover the hell out of opponents. You know, Carlos Takam has got ridiculous amount of coverage for a replacement opponent 2 weeks out. Obviously as a Joshua opponent, but you know, I'd just be interested to see how they'd go about, like, you know, covering the opponents and pushing the promotion of this show, because it is a small hall show at the Copper Box. So I'd be very interested to see how it's promoted by Frank.
Yeah, well, Copper Box holds 6,000. So, you know, it's certainly substantially bigger than like a York Hall. But then again, at the same time, it's certainly substantially smaller than like an O2. You know, my thoughts are that given the amount of money it will have taken Frank to have signed up Selby and Degale, you know, because it seems that these are two guys who wanted a lot of money, especially from what Eddie Hearn says. And we know that James Degale certainly has earned some pretty big purses in the past, let's put it that way. But given the fact that both of them have been signed up for this fight night, and given the fact that, you know, realistically, this is not going to be a pay-per-view bill, It seems very unlikely that they're going to be able to bring in A-grade opponents for either guy. So I expect both of them to be, tick-over type fights. I guess the other thing is in terms of notice, you're not getting 7-8 weeks notice. It's only announced today and they're fighting in December. I did notice a few people in the chat speculating that maybe you could bring in a domestic opponent for Degale, someone like a Rocky Fielding or a John Ryder is potentially ranked. What's your take on that?
I mean, the Fielding's obviously coming off a win, isn't he, against Brophy? And he did tweet. He said, I saw his tweet saying, "Fight new soon, but he won't be defending his Commonwealth belt." So there is potential there, but obviously he's with Eddie, and I don't think Eddie wants to send someone like Rocky over to Box Nation. Obviously, he's got a not a big thing with Rocky, but he's got a fairly decent thing going in Liverpool, and he throws him on. He chucks him on, similar to Crawler in Manchester, and they do well enough, I guess, on the normal sort of Sky Sports Saturday boxing shows. So John Ryder,
Fielding's a bit expendable to him, like. I think that too. Callum Smith, and he's kind of never really pushed him. I wonder if he would sacrifice him if the money was right.
I think that too, but at the same time, obviously Rocky does make him some money. He headlined the last show in Liverpool, so I would have thought if Martin Murray was still campaigning at super middleweight, that might be a name that he could chuck him in with. He'd be happy for Murray to go over to Box Nation, and he's been over in Box Nation before, so I would have thought Martin Murray would be all right. John Ryder is a possibility. He's had a few good wins in his last few fights. John Ryder is probably more realistic, I think, because he's not as big a name. Obviously, I don't think he's as big a name for Eddie as Rocky is. And I'm not saying Rocky Fielding is a big name. Don't get me wrong, but John Ryder possibly. I don't think he's actually in the IBF rankings. I was looking; he's not in the top 15, and I'd assume they'd have to pick someone from the top 15. The top sort of,
He's not, but we expect he'll get ranked after that last fight. They haven't updated them since that, I don't think.
Okay, yeah, possibly. Then John Ryder is a possibility, maybe. But I wouldn't be surprised to see like a Vincent Fagan Boots or a Caleb Plant, or someone that maybe the boxing hardcore will know, but the casual fan won't know, and they come over for cheap money, and they're there to just make the girl look ultra slick and really, really good and appealing to the new sort of the new fan that he's turned over to Box Nation on. So John Ryder's a possibility, but obviously we'll wait to see if he gets ranked first.
Let me ask you guys something. Do you not think it will be a pay-per-view if it's Degale and Selby both on?
I don't think.
Well, Selby doesn't draw, so Degale can't be on standalone pay-per-view unless it's like Chris Eubank Jr. or George Groves or someone like that. So I doubt, I highly doubt it. Frank would be making a massive mistake if he puts on pay-per-view. I think he'll do way better with Degale on normal Box Nation or normal BT and try and build him from there if they continue to work together after this fight.
Yeah, I'm feeling they might put it. I'm feeling they might.
I mean, the only thing, now you mention it, Paul, if it is just a one-fight deal, Frank's not going to be minded to invest in Degale. He's not going to pay Degale a big purse and pay a load of money for an opponent just for Degale then to go and work with another promoter in his next fight. So, maybe if it is just a one-fight deal and they're operating in that fashion, maybe he will stick it on pay-per-view. I don't know. I don't think either Degale and Selby are big enough names to be standalone headliners, especially if the opponents are kind of subpar.
What day is it? What day is it?
Bear with. It is December the 9th. You got
I was wondering why Billy Joe Saunders is fighting in Canada. Is it? I understand why.
I was wondering that as well. What on earth? I mean, obviously, better money, and I think Billy Joe Saunders is kind of like one of those guys that just wants to make a lot of money now, isn't he? But I don't know what has possessed them to have that. I really don't. As the
$3.5 million.
See,
you're getting $3.5 million.
I thought you could have put the Degale on the night, then Billy Joe Saunders later on, and do a whole.
But Frank's doing an international show as well. Rigo versus Lomachenko is on the same night, so probably has to play broadcasting rights for that as well. So, yeah.
Which night is Rigo Lomachenko on, Chet?
It's the same night, mate.
As Billy Joe?
No, as Degale and Selby.
Ooh, well, does that make the chance of a pay-per-view more likely then?
Possible.
No, it's not going to be pay-per-view, lads. There's no way to be pay-per-view. You can't be pay-per-view. With no people to fight against. No way. Frank has only done one pay-per-view yet. That's not going to be number 2.
Yeah, let's say if it was
Loma Rigo, Tom. Loma Rigo with Degale and Selby and world title fights, and then you say Dubois and Yard and Woodstock and all of these names on the undercard. Yeah.
If it was
Loma Rigo wouldn't add 500 pay-per-views. Look, and the thing that I don't know if you boys have been mentioned is that like Degale and Selby are the two that signed for Al Heyman.
Yeah.
And since they signed for Al Heyman, they've been chucked under the bus. Right? In America, your promoter and your manager can't be the same person. But in England you can. And pretty much Eddie has thrown them to the back of the bus since that ever happened. So it's like fair play to someone like Degale. I really respect guys like Degale who basically fucking don't suck their arses of their promoters. They go where the money is. Degale has made a lot of money. And all this stuff about earn with Hearn, it's one thing if you're AJ, but for everybody else, I just don't see it. Like these guys like Warrington and Degale and these boys, they're going for the money. And Frampton. Like Frampton, you can be sure like that Frampton went for the money. And Frampton had different offers from these places. So the big broadcasters behind, we'll see. I just think, like the Sky Sports is, Eddie's a better salesman. That's the thing. But if we look at the risk in the Matchroom one and Sky as a platform, they use platform to milk money from the boxing fans. That's what they're doing. BT don't do it to the same extent at all. And if AD goes off on his own, Matchroom are left with basically no fighter. You literally.
Yeah, well, I think with Eddie Hearn,
he's the fourth best fighter.
It's based around pay-per-view. So if you're someone who can become a pay-per-view fighter, be that a Tony Bellew, be that a Kell Brook, be that a David Hay, the money is definitely there with Sky. But I agree with you in the sense that if you are not one of those pay-per-view headliners, and Degale, Selby, Warrington were kind of not quite at that level when they went to Frank. If you're not at that level, maybe there is more money elsewhere because the Matchroom business model looks to me to be based largely around that pay-per-view buys, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the thing is as well is though that BT haven't done pay-per-view really yet. They've done it for the Golovkin card, but they haven't done a big pay-per-view in a British one yet. So we got to see, we just have to wait and see. Mikey is saying it in the chat that it backfired on Degale. Degale probably got paid more money than any Eddie Hearn fighter bar AJ.
Nonsense.
Who got paid more than him in the time that Degale went abroad?
Tony Bellew.
Yeah, one. But Degale...
Kell Brook.
Right, maybe 2. You know what I mean? Like Degale has done.
David
Hay. I don't know. Has Kell Brook?
David Hay.
David Hay is
Carlos Takam.
No, ask me ours. No, Degale got
Charles Martin.
Anthony Cruller.
Fuck off. Come on, no, seriously.
No, I bet Cruller has earned more money than James Degale.
How on earth has he earned more money than James Degale? Are you telling me Cruller has made $1 million payday? Cruller has never made $1 million payday.
I think Crawler probably has made $1 million payday.
No way has he made $1 million payday. Sorry?
£850,000.
Has he?
850.
Are you sure?
Yeah, for the first.
Like, look at the last. Andre Durrell, right? That was with Al Heyman. Lucian Butte, Al Heyman. Medina, Al Heyman. Badu Jack. You know, he made a lot of money on those 4 fights. A lot of money.
James DeGale made less than £1 million for the Badu Jack fight.
Yeah, but he probably got $1 million for Lucian Butte.
I'm reading the headline of the Daily Express. James DeGale will make less than $1 million from Badu Jack fight. How much has any, you know, I just think he done very well. You know, I think people are wrong about that. But I just don't see. If you're AJ, you make a lot of money. And if you can get a big pay-per-view and a big star to clash, Bellew got money off David Hay. That's not like one. James DeGale's career has stagnated.
And they're heavyweight. That's only a British point of view.
Profile right now than Groves and Eubank. You know, if he'd have stuck with Eddie Hearn, I'm sure he'd have done it.
That's in UK. UK is a small market. It's a provincial market, lads.
Yeah, but he's come back to the UK for a reason, hasn't he?
Come back to the UK. This small
He's injured. He's injured.
Boxing is. He's come back for his return fight to the UK. Look at Lee Selby. Lee Selby's profile has gone off a cliff. You know,
absolutely has. But you know, Lee Selby doesn't sell any tickets, and he hasn't been in good fights. You know, he's a featherweight. You got to take these things into account. You know, super middleweight's a better division. But like, you know, I just think, you know, there's a good chance that, you know, I don't know. I think Frank is building up a very good stable, and at the moment, Eddie Hearn has got some. He's got some big names at the top who are getting, you know, AJ, and then he's got a couple of lads that are old, and he's got a load of youngsters, but there's nothing in the middle.
Yeah, it's going to take him like 4 years or whatever to get sort of fighters all at the top end, isn't it? Very quickly.
It is and it isn't. I kind of agree with you, but don't be surprised if. You know, if after let's say AJ gets injured for a year, let's not be surprised if Hearn does big deals with David Hay, George Groves, Chris Eubank Jr., James DeGale, literally at the click of a finger. You know, he's got working relationships with both of those guys. He'll have pay-per-view dates freed up. You know, and my personal belief is that at present, whilst other promoters are doing well, in terms of the real pay-per-view money, and, you know, ability to deliver 500,000, 1 million plus pay-per-view buys, there's only one person with the track record of that.
I don't know, though, because what happens if, like, next year, I think next year we're going to see BT pay-per-views big time. Because next year you could have Billy Joe Saunders in a pay-per-view. Very possible. And then you can add Degale to a pay-per-view. Then you could add Selby Warrington, with Degale fighting, I don't know, Benavidez pay-per-view. You know, they're there. As long as it's there, I don't see why.
I think
if the main event is big,
on a BT pay-per-view.
I think if the main event is is a big fight, so you say Billy Joe Saunders versus Golovkin or something like that, then, you know, the purse is going to be significantly smaller for someone like DeGale or Selby. So they're not going to be in. They're not going to get the money, and they're going to be fighting. They're not going to be able to fight David Benavidez, for example, you know? So it's tough. It's tough.
I think
I don't think
struggled to get like Eubank Jr. because I think Eddie Hearn might have alienated the Eubanks, you know, with the whole Golovkin situation, because he was kind of like a little bit. Normally they play it safe, don't they, in the interviews, like the IFL interviews and stuff. But Eddie Hearn pretty much chucked Senior off the bus over that stuff. So.
To be fair.
Yeah, I think they seem to be trying to go, you know, down Route 3 where Route 3 never existed before. You know, they seem to be trying to go their own sort of way, don't they, the Eubanks? I just think they're so hard to, and it's a shame because I think Junior is probably next to AJ is probably the most marketable fighter, British fighter at the moment. After AJ, I don't think there's anybody more.
Pig second. The Pig.
Hey?
The Pig is second.
Groves.
Joe Pigford.
After age. Pigford. The Hog, as I like to call him.
Hog. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens, though. It's going to be fascinating to see who the opponents are. Let's hope the copper box is sold out. You know, if the copper box isn't sold out with those two on the card, it's going to be hard to ever sell that arena out. So, you know, I think...
Sorry, Tom. I also heard that a go-go's going to BT Sports. So
a go-go?
Yeah.
Oh, another big pay-per-view name into. But who was it who said that this card would be pay-per-view? Was that Paul or was that Jay?
Well, I asked the question. I suggested that it possibly could be.
Yeah, at first I was dismissing it, but now you've put it in my head, especially with what Jet said with Loma Rigo the same night. You know, let's wait with interest and see when the opponents are announced if that will be a pay-per-view, Bill.
I mean, he might stack the card as well. That's the thing. He might try and like put a couple of other decent fights on it, and just say, look, it's pay-per-view. Selby, you know,
maybe Daniel Dubois for a British title against Sexton. Maybe Anthony Yard in a step-up fight. You know,
entirely possible. Mm-hmm. Yard's becoming quite talked about. Do you know what I mean? Dubois is obviously getting quite a following. I think it's entirely possible that it becomes a pay-per-view card.
Interesting. Guys, let's move it on. We can come back to this obviously when the fights are announced. Jet, have you seen these rumours that Flanagan Linares is looming?
Yeah, I've seen some news. I mean, Terry Flanagan is, you know,
Irish
is he in the popcorn? Yeah, I mean, Terry Flanagan is. I have no interest in the guy whatsoever, and that might sound real harsh, but you know, he just has no profile whatsoever. I don't know what Frank's done with him. He keeps saying the Linares fight is practically done on Twitter and Instagram and that sort of stuff, but you know, I have nothing more really to say on him. People are talking the Robert Easter fight. I can't see that happening. I'd prefer to see, you know, Robert Easter versus Mikey Garcia if that was on the cards. I know they've been talking about Garcia versus Easter and Linares versus Flanagan in a sort of semi-final matchup.
I thought Garcia versus Linares was ordered by one of the.
That was ordered by the WBC, but Mikey Garcia's kind of said he's come out and said he didn't take the Cotto fight because he didn't want to be tied into Golden Boy with a multi-fight deal. He was doing better by himself or something like that, and he can fight Linares just having a matter like because he's been mandated. So it's a bit of a mess at you know it's a bit of a mess at lightweight. Sorry, and
I'd like to see Garcia Linares. I think that'd be
that's the best fight in the division for me. Flanagan, I don't really have an interest in. I think Luke Campbell gives him all sorts of problems. If Luke Campbell faces him, I think he gives him a lot of problems. You know, Terry Flanagan is he's overrated for me, and he doesn't have any sort of profile. He's average. He looked really poor against Petr Petrov. I mean, you know, if you go back to maybe the Diego Magdaleno fight, maybe possibly, you know, I know he knocked him out in 2 rounds. I think it was. He looked devastating in that fight. I think the weight cut is probably getting to him and that sort of stuff. But there's nothing concrete on the Linares fight as far as I've actually heard. He says it's done, but Frank hasn't come out with any sort of a tweet or any official confirmation. So I guess we'll wait and see on that one.
Yeah, it's obviously a fight we'll come back to if it is announced. Terry, you know, Jorge Linares must be loving life at the minute. You know, he's had 2 big money fights against Anthony Crolla that were both fairly comfortable wins. A big money fight on a pay-per-view bill against Kevin Mitchell. Big money fight against Luke Campbell. He's going to complete the set, isn't he, Jet?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, as you said, Crolla, Campbell, Mitchell beforehand, and you know, Terry. Someone's just put in the chat. Terry's 33-0. Who is he for? Who is Terry Flanagan for? You know, you guys tell me. I don't know. You know, a top class guy on his resume, and he's 33-0.
It's like Wilder, isn't it? Is like his resume looks absolutely great. Knocked out all but one opponent, and then you actually dig a little deeper and find that the opponent before fucking Bermain Stavern was Jason Gavin. Like for Wilder's
even then, Paul, you know,
fight.
at least Wilder makes his own sort of, you know, not entertainment, but at least he talks. He has a bit of a following. Terry Flanagan,
Yeah,
I mean, you know, no one knows about him.
Yeah, at least Wilder's been trying to step up, you know, because he's tried to fight Pavek and he's tried to fight Lewis Ortiz. So, you know, I've got some sympathy for him in recent years.
It's like Flanagan has just put his career in the hands of Frank Warren, and Frank Warren's just washed his hands. You know, Frank Warren's just been like, well, you don't sell tickets, you're not a big enough name, you don't promote yourself whatsoever, so you're the last in line, and I need to focus on someone else. He's given, you know, Leon Woodstock, Zelfa Barrett, Anthony Yard. You know, obviously Yard is a bit more marketable, but he's given guys, you know, Leon Woodstock compared to Terry Flanagan. He's not as good a fighter as Terry Flanagan, but Terry Flanagan, no one cares about him. That's the be all and end all of it.
Yeah. I mean, he is a guy with a very low profile, and he's kind of got everything against him. He's kind of got an uninspiring personality. His performances have been inconsistent. And then you've kind of got the fact as well that the style that he possesses is only going to appeal to a small proportion of casual fans. You know, it's very, very difficult, very, very difficult. But yeah, he's someone who really does kind of need a push to take his career to the next level. Okay, let me ask about this Matchroom card this weekend. We'll come to the individual fights, but let me just talk about the whole card. You guys will have seen that the Bullioni Callum Johnson fight is off. You guys will have seen that the Dave Allen versus Lenroy Thomas fight is off. At present, Bullioni is scheduled to fight Craig Richards, which for me is a substantially easier fight for him, especially at late notice, than Callum Johnson. And Dave Allen is due to fight against TBA, I'm afraid. Some rumours that he was due to fight Dorian Darts, but I saw on Dorian Darts' Twitter earlier that he said that it was too short notice for him. So, you know, this card is now getting a lot of stick. Obviously, the Takam fight was late notice. The Hellenius fight was late notice. You know, Hearn standing steadfast, saying that it will be a pay-per-view success because this is all about Anthony Joshua, and the fans really are out to see Anthony Joshua. What's people's takes on it?
I think it still will be a success. I think Dillian Whyte will probably sort of like manufacture a beef with Robert Hellenius and say that Robert Hellenius threatened to brick his windows or something. He's going to fucking murder him in the ring or whatever it is, because that's what Dillian Whyte does. And AJ's a fucking huge.
Paul, as you say that, a video has gone up 2 minutes ago on YouTube. Dillian Whyte goes in on Hellenius.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Hit the nail on the head there, Paul.
It all the time, doesn't he? If you think about it, like, he's linked with Lucas Brown all of a sudden. I mean, I love Dillian Whyte's interviews. He's a king of the fucking one-liners. He says some hilarious stuff. And he sells fights with it. You know, it's entertaining. And this is the entertainment business at the end of the day. You know, it's serious stuff when they get in the ring, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? And he has the ability to sell a fight, and I think those two factors, that and the fact that, you know, I think probably AJ would probably sell out if I was the opponent. So yeah, I think it probably will be a success.
Yeah, I mean, there's all the things floating around on Twitter where people have gone to their bookmakers and done the accumulator of all the fights, and it's something like, you know, you got to put £3 on to win £1, even if you pick every single fight on the card. So, yeah, I do think it's lessened the card, these pullouts. You know, Eddie Hearn was saying earlier that people aren't buying the pay-per-view to see David Allen, and I suspect that he's 100% correct. But what I do like about some of these big matchroom shows is that the cards tend to have a little bit of something for everyone. You know, you tend to have your huge headline events with Anthony Joshua. You tend to have your individual prospects, you know, on the way up in easier fights, and then you tend to have your trade fights. And for me, Lenroy Thomas versus David Allen, Callum Johnson versus Frank Buglioni, they were both 50-50 matchups. They were both matchups I could legit seeing go either way. And I think this card is lessened by not having any fight that, you know, maybe considered competitive, other than Whyte Helenius, which I view as a competitive fight, and we'll come on to that. But yeah, a disappointing one. Does anyone want to make a prediction on how it does at the box office?
Well, we all know who the main draw is, and that's Katie Taylor. She's going to bring it home, get that world title fight. You know, it's been years in the making now. It's the fight we've all been waiting for. You know, AJ can play second fiddle on Saturday night. Is
it a world title fight she's in?
Yeah.
Damn straight.
For the WBA world title.
One of 3 world titles on that night.
Who's the third one? Oh, Kaliafai
versus
Kaliafai in a barnstorm and he's 1-33 on. That should be a great fight. Then we got Katie Taylor, who I'm sure the stadium will be packed out for. And then AJ in his barnstormer too.
Yeah, there's a few fighters, you know, we've discussed a few of them tonight. A few of the panel have talked about them, but it's fighters who are just hard to get up for. For me, Warrington, Burnett, Flanagan, and I'd probably throw in Kaliafai to that one. Call me a casual, but I'm not looking forward to sitting through that being frank. Hopefully it turns out to be a good fight. But, you know, is AJ such a big draw? Can this do 1 million pay-per-view buys just with Joshua Takam?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think it might, you know, AJ is very popular. It might do 800,000 or 750,000. But, like, you know, if you think about the bad AJ cards that had, like the Molina one, I think that had Dillian Whyte and Chisora selling it. But there's nothing to sell this fight. You know, AJ is very popular, but, you know, it's his boxing style that sells it. But, like, you know, with the fights, I just don't think there's any. It doesn't seem like there's any decent fight on the undercard. I don't think there's even one to help it.
Helenius is a good fight.
Yeah, Whyte Helenius is a good fight.
Whyte Helenius, well, you know, I don't think it could be a good fight. You know, but I don't think it's sufficient enough to sell it. You know, it's not domestic. You know, most casual people don't know who Helenius is. So I just think it'll be one of the, you know, poorer performing ones. But, you know, they've had bad luck as well, you know.
Let's hope Helenius is actually in shape as well.
Yeah,
I think Helenius, he could beat him.
He looked very, very, very ponderous. I actually thought Takam looked very good in his public workout. But Helenius, you know, it wasn't one where Helenius really went through the gears. He just went out and tapped the pads. But he looked very slow, like slow as hell, you know, in the public workout.
And was he overweight?
It's hard to tell. He was wearing tracksuit bottoms and a big T-shirt, so it's hard to tell. I'm actually going to not make a prediction on that fight till after the weigh-in, because I think if Robert Helenius turns up in good shape, I think he'll beat Dillian Whyte, actually. But I think if Robert Helenius, you know, turns up very, very heavy and clearly not having trained for the fight, then I suspect Dillian Whyte's youth and momentum and, you know, the fact he's had a big training camp will mean he has enough. Well, yeah. What do you guys make of this news that Anthony Joshua is supposedly going to weigh in a lot lighter? You know, I'll kind of believe it when I see it, but a lot of the rumours are online saying AJ is going to come in about a stone lighter than he did against Klitschko, because he realises that potentially came close to costing him in the Klitschko fight.
Good, he needs to, but he'll still probably gas anyway later down the stretch if it goes. Sorry, go on.
Won't make any difference. Still going to win.
He's still like a
fight.
heavy set, you know, muscle bound guy. So, you know, that's 1 stone doesn't make the world of difference. I'd say if Takam does take him late and the pace is, you know, at a frantic sort of pace or a quick enough pace, then Joshua you know, he could gas later on in the fight. We've seen it in he punched himself out obviously, but he doesn't have the best gas tank. Let's put it that way.
How do you guys think this fight's going to go? I mean, I've heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's going to be easy. It's going to be a couple of rounds, 3 or 4 rounds." I'm not so sure, you know.
Jay thinks it's easy work. I think the rest of us are quite, think that potentially. My perspective is this is probably a harder fight than Pulev because of the styles. You know, we've never seen someone who is going to try and take the fight to the inside on AJ, and Takam's a sort of high-class presser fighter. AJ, for me, with his stamina concerns, he could be vulnerable to a presser fighter. My concern is Takam is obviously late notice. Yes, he's kind of been on, some sort of reserve list, but let's be honest, when he was on that reserve list, he probably never thought he was actually going to get the call up. So, the style Takam brings, he's going to have to bring a lot of heat, a lot of pressure, a lot of output. And if he's not in shape, if he's going to gas, then he's just going to be a sitting duck for the bigger man's straight punches. So I think what kind of condition Takam is in is kitty. But I thought he looked good at the public workout. And, whilst Takam is beatable, whilst he isn't got the best technique, he isn't, etc. Some of the things he does, I think, could cause AJ some real problems if he's at his best.
The only worry is because this pay-per-view is going to be so shit, is that if you blast him out in like 5 minutes, it's going to be even worse, isn't it? Because they're going to be like, well, we paid like X amount of money to watch Joshua knock someone out in 2 rounds.
I don't.
And he said they'll start putting it long just to make the most.
Sorry, Jake.
No,
I don't think we mess around with that, Jay. With Joshua's stamina, being the big risk, and being the big risk to their business. I think if they can take Takam out in 1 minute, that's what they'll do. But that's a big if because Takam's got a good chin. And, AJ may well be the biggest puncher he's been in with, but Takam is not someone who just gets blown over.
I mean, the thing is, Takam is always in shape. He always seems to be in shape. I think he's one of those guys that stays in the gym. And when you look at Takam, he's been in with a couple of decent guys. And is it only Povetkin that stopped him? I could be wrong about that. But
that's correct, yeah.
So if you look at Povetkin, if you look at like the scandals with PEDs after that, yeah, and then you look at that fight, watch that fight again. Povetkin in that, was it the 10th or 11th round, he knocks Takam out.
Yes.
Povetkin looked like it was the first fucking round, yeah, and stamina is one of the things that that particular PED is known for. So we can almost say for sure that was a fucking juiced up Povetkin that still took fucking 10 rounds in a really competitive fight to get rid of Carlos Takam. I think, I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think.
How long ago was that?
Was it maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
Someone tell me.
I'll look it up, but I would guess probably about 3 years ago.
Yeah, and how old's Takam now?
Let's have a look.
He's what?
36. He's 36 years old. He fought Povetkin in 2014. He actually fought Povetkin 3 days ago yesterday. So 3 years. Yeah. Subsequently, he lost that fight. He came back with wins over Nascimento, Michael Sprott, George Arias. Fought Parker 18 months ago. Pulled Parker very, very close. Won 5 rounds against Parker. And subsequent to that, he's had 2 KO wins in his return.
With Parker, okay, so Parker that fought Huey Fury, how long will he last against Joshua?
I actually think Parker would probably last less than Takam. And Parker's a better fighter than Takam. But Parker is a very, very open fighter who would, stand at distance with Joshua and trade long punches. Whereas Takam is someone who's, a very, very durable presser fighter who's going to try and take the distance away, which could well be the, to the kryptonite of Joshua. If he's allowed to do that, Joshua could easily catch him coming in the first round and, Joshua obviously hits very hard.
I don't think we've seen Joshua in with anybody remotely like Takam at Takam's level. We might have seen him in with like shorter fighters that have a similar style, but journeyman types. I don't think Joshua's been in with anybody like Takam, anyone as good as Takam. And if you look, Povetkin is a big punch out. Povetkin on PEDs, absolutely iced Johan Depar, who is quite a durable fighter, and just could not get rid of Carlos Takam for round after round after round. I think this might spring a bit of a surprise to a few people. That's what I'm saying. Not saying he's going to beat AJ. I don't think he'll beat him, but I think it'll be a more difficult fight than people think.
So when you say Takam's level, right? Since Povetkin is for Nascimento, Sprott, Arias, Bukowski, and Bakorin. So what level's that?
Yeah, and
that doesn't say elite level.
He fought Joseph Parker though as well. It's a very, very close fight that some people thought.
He's fought two good, what you call elite fighters, and he lost to both of them.
Yeah, but
no way to be Joshua. No way.
I mean, no, I'm not saying he'll beat him, but I think he'll give him more problems than some people think. That's all I'm saying. But we'll see. I could be wrong.
What are people's predictions for AJ versus Takam? I'll go first. I'm predicting AJ by knockout, but I do think that Takam may well cause AJ one or two problems.
Yeah, I think AJ by knockout, but I think it'll be sort of like mid to late rounds. I don't think it's going to be a 2, 3, or even really 4 rounder like some people are thinking it's going to be. I think AJ by knockout, 8th round.
Oh. You know my feelings about this fight. I've expressed it enough. I know that it'll be early.
Early for Tom?
I'd say probably AJ will be doing well, and then Katie Taylor will storm in and get the ladder and smash AJ over the head, and then there'll be a submission by Takam.
Will Conor McGregor be involved at all?
I hope so.
I do too. Okay.
There's only one Conor McGregor, and there's nobody better, and he's going to knock out Floyd Mayweather. Jet, your prediction for the big fight, mate?
AJ, mid to late rounds.
Any problems or easy work?
One or two, but nothing that should throw him off his rhythm. Should be, straightforward enough.
Good stuff. Let's talk Helenius versus Dillian Whyte. For me, this is the fight of the night. Paul, we haven't discussed this one yet, mate. What's your take on that?
I think it's a decent fight. Helenius, I think, other than AJ, has Dillian Whyte fought anybody better than Helenius?
I guess you'd say Chisora is a very similar level, but no one clearly better.
Yeah, I think it's a decent fight. I'm not a huge Dillian Whyte fan. I'm really not. I think there's just a lot of holes in this game. He's technically not very good. As his opposition has increased, it kind of like his punch power has kind of like come into question for me as well. I think I find him more entertaining outside of the ring than I do inside of the ring. I think it's got the potential to be quite boring. It might not be, but I think it's definitely got the potential to be quite boring. You just never know what you're going to get with Dillian Whyte. You could get like the Dave Allen fight, or you could get like the Chisora fight. I don't think this will be that, but I think it's a competitive fight. I don't think it's not. You guys know me. I'm not a betting man. It'd need to be a pretty sure thing for me to start putting money down on fights. It's not this is not one of them. I wouldn't put money on Dillian Whyte.
Yeah, in fact, I'm thinking of putting money the other way. I could see certain bookmakers, had 4-1 on Hellenius to win, and very big prices if you were able to choose the method of victory for Hellenius to win at. For what it's worth, Hellenius.
Got a bit of power as well, Hellenius.
He's got a bit of power, and Hellenius is at his best when he's allowed to stand off and dictate the fight from range. Where he's uncomfortable is when someone like a Derek Chisora tries to get in range and rough him up. Dillian Whyte, even though for me he isn't a very good technical boxer, he's actually kind of adopted the approach of trying to box his way in, trying to jab his way in, etc., before getting to work. And I actually think Hellenius may well be a bit sharper, and he's certainly a lot longer than Dillian Whyte. I really wouldn't be surprised if Hellenius beats him, but the key is what condition is Hellenius in, because he's a very, very, very big, heavily set guy, and he's taken this fight on short notice. If he comes in 19 stone for this fight, Dillian's going to be in very, very good condition, and Hellenius could be in trouble. It could be a fight. Both of these guys are quite slow paced at times. It could be a fight where they're both gassed off the 6, and you're potentially looking at a pretty dire for a couple of rounds. You never know. Tom, what's your thoughts on this one?
Who knows? It all depends on the condition of him. He's got knockout power, so he can. I think he can take out Dillian Whyte. I don't believe this thing that Dillian Whyte's got an amazing chin. He's got a decent chin, but so I think it's Eddie Hearn doesn't make these short-term ones unless they're at his advantage. So, and he likes Dillian Whyte to prop up his AJ and sell his AJ pay-per-view. So you have to think Dillian's going to do it, and that your man is not going to be in great condition, but he can still punch. And if he is in decent condition, I'd probably nearly make him favourite.
Will you be having a look at those odds?
That's an interesting question, because it'll be full of casuals betting that market. Let's see what the odds are like now. Has anybody not seen them yet?
4-1 on Hellenius. 4-1.
Well, I think you'd have to go by KO. See what the KO.
Why? Just because he wouldn't get a decision?
He won't get a decision.
7-1 on the KO, I think.
Yeah, you can get 8. You can get 8. You can get even better. You can get 87-10.
So like 8.5-1, bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 17-2 or whatever. But that's pretty decent. Like that's worth it. That's worth a gamble. Is it? They're giving him like 11% chance. I don't know. He is a big puncher, though, isn't he, Hellenius?
I think he's a big puncher for the first 2 or 3 rounds, and I think after that, a lot of the snap goes out of his work. But Whyte won't be the hardest guy to find, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it here. Like, I'm just looking at his wins. Franz Rill. Oh, unanimous decision. He has a few. UD over Michael Sprott. Oh, yeah. 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 You'd have to go for Dillian.
He's had a lot of injuries, and he's been very inactive, and he's fought a lot of fights with hand injuries and shoulder injuries and that sort of thing. But at his best, he's a good fighter. Part of me wonders if he's a little bit jaded now. He's been inactive. He's fought lower level of opposition. He's gone up in weight. Obviously, he took a heavy knockout to Johan de Par. You kind of wonder if even at 33, if he's kind of his best days are behind him. But I honestly believe Dillian Whyte is a beatable fighter. If you're one of these people who thinks that Dillian Whyte legit deserves to be in a ring at world title level, then yeah, by all means, he should be a favourite over Hellenius. But a lot of us on this podcast are somewhat sceptical of some of the hype surrounding Whyte, I think. Anyone else?
I concur. Sorry?
I said, anyone else on the panel got any thoughts on Whyte Hellenius before we move it on?
It'll be Whyte points in a fight, I'd say.
Interesting. Do you think Whyte will outpoint Hellenius from range, or do you think he'll just put pressure on him?
He'll just put the pressure on it. It'll just be really messy, I think. Yeah, he'll just try and get in close and just try and. He doesn't like to be roughed up really, and try not to get the range because he's got the height and everything. So he'll try and box by range. But I think Whyte will just have to try and put the pressure on him. I think it will just be a really dull fight, to be honest. And I think it'll be 12 rounds of that. Disappointing. But you never know, do you? You never know. But if you ask for a pick, then that's it.
Interesting. Okay, so a bit of a split panel there. As I say, I'm going to withhold my prediction till after the weigh-in, and I'll do a video on Friday evening with my prediction because I make no bones about it. I do make Hellenius a slight favourite if he comes in good nick for this fight. Guys, what about the rest of the undercard? There's the Katie Taylor fight. There's the Kalia 5 fight. There's obviously Frank Buglioni versus Craig Richards. There's a few of the Olympians. I'm going to be honest and say that I don't have too many opinions on any of those fights other than I think Frank Buglioni will probably win his fight by knockout. But guys on the panel, anyone want to get in on any of those?
I couldn't care less about any of those fights, to be completely honest.
No. I've never been so unexcited about a pay-per-view event in my life.
Yeah.
It doesn't excite me at all.
Even the Olympians, it's like a Coley and that. I just think I think some of them are kind of accidents waiting to happen and just uninspiring, just really uninspiring, all of it, to be completely honest.
Spot on. A Coley is an accident waiting to happen, definitely. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. My good friend Ultratech Sports has a list of accidents waiting to happen, and Lawrence Okoli is firmly at the top of that list. I believe, having listened to his channel. Jet, what about Kalia Fai?
Yeah, he's against the undefeated fighter Sho Ishida. Heard some
Not
decent
much footage on him.
Sorry.
Not much footage available on the Ishida.
Not much. He's well regarded, sort of over in Japan. I haven't really seen anything of him, to be honest. Nothing. I've only heard positive things about him, but the betting odds, obviously, I guess, are quite wide. So wouldn't really expect anything more than either a Kalia Fai stoppage or a large points decision. He had a large points decision in his last fight against Muranaka, I think it was. So, as he's obviously stepped up in levels, his power hasn't been the only thing to bail him out. He's had to rely on his boxing skills, although he did look very, very good against Luis Concepcion. So, probably go with Kalia Fai on points, unanimous decision. But I like to see him fight, the top of the division, Naoya Inoue. Roman Gonzalez, I think, is actually number 1 or 2 in the WBA rankings. He's an ex-mandatory, so that would be a good fight. There's a few others as well. Obviously, Juan Francisco Estrada will be fighting Saw Rungvisai in his next fight. So, any one of those guys would be really good. But we'll wait and see on Kalia Fai. He should get the W this weekend, though.
I think Inoue or Estrada will ice Kalia Fai. I think either one of them would beat the fucking brakes off him, to be completely honest.
I don't think Estrada will knock him out. Estrada might win on points. Cal probably has a better chance against Estrada than Inoue. I think Inoue is the best in the weight class for me. He's the best at super flyweight for me.
Yeah, I think so too. If no one's got anything else on any of the undercard stuff, have you got anything? Is there anything else?
There's one other big, I say big one. It's a relevant fight. I think it's Friday night. We had the last preliminary fight in the Boxing Super Series, Jürgen Bremer versus Rob Braun. Very interesting to see who Callum Smith will be going up against next.
Depends how Bremer makes weight, sorry.
Yeah. I think Bremer could beat Callum Smith.
I think so too, if he's not too tight at the weight, he's not dead at the weight.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to have a bet on Bremer to win the World Boxing Super Series this weekend because I don't actually think he's going to win it, but he's 50-1. And I think he could quite conceivably beat Rob Braun and beat Callum Smith. And then you'd have him in the final against a Groves or a Eubank. There's a chance something could happen, like one of them gets injured in their semi-final, and you're getting 50-1 on a proven fighter like Jürgen Bremer. But also, you can kind of play the markets a bit. So, yeah, if he does beat those two guys, by the time he gets to the final, he'll be, 4-1, 5-1. And then you can kind of balance the bet on the other side if you're so inclined to do that. So, yeah, I may just, it's 50-1. Not talking life savings here, but, you may have a few quid on that, I guess. Anyone seen a lot of Brandt before this weekend? Has anyone got an instinct on that fight?
I've never seen him fight, to be completely honest.
No, he's moving up for middleweight, I think, as well. He's
come up a weight class. So he's come up a weight class. Bremer's gone down a weight class.
Probably favours the younger man in Rob Brandt, but he's not proven at any sort of significant level. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
One thing he has probably in his favour is such a big opportunity for him. Whereas Bremer's had those big fights, been involved in big fights, and I think for Brandt this is his real opportunity to put a statement out there and make some decent money.
100%. Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. It's could be a nice retirement pension for Jürgen Bremer, but you never know. Guys, let me throw it open to you. We've covered what I've written down on the agenda. We've kind of gone through it at a decent pace, given the amount of stuff there was to get through. Has anyone got anything else they want to throw into the mix?
I just wanted to ask, simply because I haven't been on the last few weeks, and I don't know if you guys have discussed it. If you have, feel free to just tell me to shut the fuck up. Yeah, Loma Rigo. Have you guys talked about this since it's been announced? What do people think? Who's everyone picking? I know Tom's a big Rigondeaux fan. For what it's worth, I think Loma beats fucking breaks off of him. I think Loma probably stops him.
I'm with you.
Careful now, Paul. Careful, Paul. I don't want to have to give you a hiding live on air.
Go on, son. What do you think? Tell us. Tell us why.
I don't know. I the same as you. I missed the call, the fight, or the time it was announced. I was off on holidays in Ireland, so I brought it up a couple of weeks afterwards. But I was like, I think that Rigo is underdog, but I think he's got the tools to be able to beat him. That he's got longer arms than Lomachenko. He'll be giving away size, but that he'll have the style to be able to break Lomachenko's rhythm. And while I think he's an underdog, I think that if they were the same size, I'd pick Rigo. And I'm still I think he's an underdog, but I'm going to go for Rigo because I think he could do it. And I think that if he comes close, I don't think he'll get any decision. But I could easily see him winning a 7-5 and not getting it.
The only way I could conceivably see Rigo winning, because Rigo won't come to Loma. He's a sniper. He's a long range guy. He's gonna wait and he's gonna try and counter. The only way I could possibly see him winning would be when Lomachenko tries to come inside, catching him. But when you look at some of the guys Lomachenko's fought, guys like Salido and whatnot, I don't mean pound for pound. Rigo's a bigger puncher than Salido pound for pound. But if you look at like the size of some of those guys, Lomachenko's been hit by guys a lot bigger than Rigo. I simply don't think Rigo is going to have the power to do anything with Lomachenko. And with that in mind, I just think he's going to box the head off of him. Well, I don't think he's going to have power to get any kind of respect off of Lomachenko at all.
Well, I think he will have the power. I think Rigo is pound for pound one of the top punchers in the sport. Like for a super bantamweight, he ices people, and with one punch, like he's a mile of a better puncher than Carl Frampton or any of these boys. And I think that while he mightn't be able to stop Lomachenko, I think that, you know, if you look at what Rigo done to other very big guys he's been in against, the Japanese guy, he nearly, you know, gave him a brain tumor, and then also the Filipino guy. Did he knock down what's his name?
You're talking about
Nito Donaire.
Yeah, did he knock down Donaire? I think he did, didn't he?
Yeah, I think they traded knockdowns, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so. But like, you know, I think he
knocked him down as well twice, didn't he? As well, that was the guy that knocked him down.
Yeah, I know. Like, so, but he gets up. But I think that the thing is that the reason why I give him a chance is because I think if somebody can break Lomachenko's rhythm, it's Rigo. Rigo always sets the pace in his fights, and Lomachenko always sets the pace in his fights. And it'll be who can break that rhythm. And I think that Rigo is more likely to be able to break the rhythm, but whether he's big enough or whether he'll have the politics to get the decision. But look, if he gets it, if that goes even close to, like, if that gets like to a robbery, say for Loma or something like that, Rigo should be pound for pound number one for me. You know, he's going up 2 weight divisions, and he's small in his own weight division and taking on a pound for pound guy. And if he wins it, to me, he's number one pound for pound.
You know,
or if he even, if it's even a draw.
David Benavidez, I think.
His inactivity, I think.
David Benavidez is only number 9, gossip. Let's not get into this.
I think he's in.
And Alfie Ward is retired. So everybody now will agree with me.
I think his inactivity prevents that. I mean, Jazza Dickens and what was the last guy in what, a space of about 2 years. I mean, I think pound for pound number one's a bit over the top. It would be a fucking huge win if he did it.
Well, are you saying that Lomachenko is pound for pound number one? Are you not saying that?
Did I say that?
I don't know. I think you did you?
I don't think I did. No.
No. I thought when we were doing a pound for pound one, did you not say he's the best boxer in the world?
I didn't put him pound for pound number one. I said based on the eye test, based on what I see, I think he is the best fighter in the world at the minute. He hasn't got the resume to put him at pound for pound number one yet. But I think, I think he probably is the best fighter in the world. Yeah.
Gets beaten by a guy who's 2 weight classes below him. Well, then you'd have to say Rigo would be the best fighter in the world. Then at that point, you know what I mean.
Then my opinion would change. I still don't think Rigo's resume would put him at pound for pound number one, simply because he hasn't got enough recent form to put him there. That's what I'm saying. But
that'd be a single better win.
It would be.
He'd have 2 better wins probably then.
I can't see him beating Lomachenko at all.
But if he does beat him,
pound for pound number one, I probably would. I'd probably have him just edging Terence Crawford. But I'm going to be honest. I think Lomachenko is going to smash him to pieces. You know, I think
no way.
Guillermo Rigondeaux, for a start, the guy's going to come into the ring. He's going to be, is he going to be 37 or 38 years old?
We don't do it. No one knows, but he's old. That's damn true.
He's a minimum of 37 years old, a minimum. He's been inactive. He hasn't really had a notable fight for a very, very long period of time. He's small for his weight class as it is, but he's going up several weight classes here. We've seen him dropped and hurt at a sort of lower level and at a substantially lower weight class. And he's going up against a guy who, you know, not only has everything, but has youth, has size, has output. You know, Rigo throws, 2 punches around. He's going up against a guy who's going to be swarming all over him like a wasp. But this isn't going to be like the sort of high-volume scrapper versus the low-volume counterpuncher. You know, he's going up against a guy who's also got the amateur pedigree. You know, he's got that technique as well. So the advantage Rigo usually enjoys, I'm not so sure he's going to enjoy in this fight. I know he's a supreme technician, but I've not seen anything that tells me he's more of a supreme technician than Lomachenko.
And the thing is, I don't think he throws enough punches to win this fight anyway. I really don't. I think, I think his only chance would be to stop Lomachenko. I don't think he's going to work.
No.
going to outland him.
No, I disagree totally.
I don't think he's going to have the power to stop him, and so I just don't see a way for it again.
I think, like, regardless of whether he get the decision, but I think he definitely can outbox him. And the reason why is because I think he has the capability to be able to negate Lomachenko's rhythm. And that'll mean that he will reduce his output hugely. If there's any boxer in the world who can reduce people's outcome, it's somebody like Floyd or Rigondeaux, or Andre Ward maybe, but Rigondeaux particularly. And I think that we might see Lomachenko having to box from the outside.
What?
And that changes the fight. And if he does that, then, you know, Lomo's A game will be taken away from him. And that's the if. But I think he can do it. He's got longer arms. He's got longer arms, lads.
One thing I would say is
and that's a big thing.
It's a shame Rigo ain't a little bit bigger, because if only for that, and maybe a couple of years younger, if only for that, I think already, just as things are, I think this is probably the best sort of technical fight that can be made in world boxing right now. I think as far as, technical skills and ability, I think this is probably, it's what a fight to end the fucking year on. I'm more excited about this fight than I've been at
Katie Taylor.
Well, not quite more than Katie Taylor, but she's kind of out there on her own, isn't she? Than I have been for a men's fight in quite a while,
But one thing, just when we're saying, like, who I think Terence Crawford is probably number one, but Terence Crawford has got no big victories on his record.
I for that very reason, I don't think Terence Crawford is number one. I think Gambo and Victor Postol, are they his biggest wins? Ricky Burns, hasn't got the resume for
the division. Unify the division, though.
Yeah,
you've got to give him that.
I know, but like, that's one fight, and it was Julius Ndongo. In all honesty, I just don't think that the names are there. I don't think that the quality of wins are there for Terence Crawford yet. I love Terence Crawford. I think he's a fantastic fighter. His ability off the chart, but he hasn't got the resume to put him at number one.
Who is number one then, Paul?
Yeah, to be honest, for me, I think based on the fact that at the time he fought on, at least about 6 or 7 of his opponents were top 10 guys, it's got to be Gennady Golovkin. If you look at, Lemieux, you look at, if you look through his resume, at the time he fought about, like quite a lot of the guys he's fought recently, they were top 10 guys. I also think he beat Canelo. I just think it's kind of like, it's not the strongest form in the world, but I think of everybody that's in the running at the minute, I think he probably takes it for me.
Let me ask you this, though. So where's Canelo then in your top 3?
See, you put me on the spot. I usually need a bit more time.
You're talking about record.
Yeah,
people that.
Canelo.
But if you look at skills, for me, Crawford is the man for me. I think he's just an impressive exception. But then we're not going. If it comes to the record, but then you look at Canelo's record, he's
well, like, I think the thing
is, really.
I think you have to look at the overall picture, and the thing with Canelo has on his record, but if you look at a lot of them, he was so much bigger than them. Like coming into the ring against that Angulo, sort of like, was it 21 pounds more weighing, and like that just takes away from the victories a little bit. Obviously Canelo's got a great resume, but I think he's been a middleweight for about the last fucking 4 years and just managed to suck himself down, for my money.
Like, I think, boys, like, it's one of these things with pound for pound is that they always, if you go on resume, it means that all the guys are old and they're not in their primes. But like for me, like Rigo would be pound for pound. I think having Donaire and Lomo would be great. But you know, it's a great fight, Paul. I'm like you. I think it's a great fight, and it shows you like all this stuff you hear about from Frampton and people and Quigg and these boys saying, "Oh, you know, he can't sell a ticket." Look what happened. They put Lomo and Rigo on, and they fucking sold out the Madison Square Garden in no time.
Yeah.
It was one of the fastest selling fights in, you know, the year in America. So all of that is just promoter bullshit. Fans want to see them. And to say that this is a purist fight, I don't think it's a purist fight. It's just two top pound for pound fighters fighting against each other. This stuff about the purist stuff is bullshit. All these Cuban fighters get slated for being boring or for whatever. And if they were American fighters or British fighters or, you know, name a country, take your pick, they would get stated as being a fucking genius. Rigondo is a genius, and it takes a genius to be able to jump 2 divisions and fight a top guy and do well. And if he does it, he should get all the plaudits. And if he doesn't, screw it. He'll do better than Kell Brook did against GGG, that's for fucking sure.
I do think he might be pound for pound number 1. If he, in fact, I think I'll say now that if he beats Lomachenko, then yeah, I think he probably is pound for pound number 1. But I'm not so sure he does do better than Kell did against Triple G.
He will definitely do better. Absolutely.
I mean, he can be dropped. He's been dropped by quite a few people, and I know he's got back up and stuff, but they weren't guys of Lomachenko's size, and they weren't guys of Lomachenko's ability. People say Lomachenko can't punch, and like I agree, he's not like a one-punch knockout artist. But if you look at the Rocky Martinez, his timing, the way he sets up shots and stuff like that.
But Paul, Rocky Martinez, come on now, you might as well be talking about Eggington. You know what I mean? You know, Rocky Martinez got beaten in his prime. He got beaten by Ricky Burns.
Yeah, no, I disagree.
You know,
but
I don't think
another level than that. Come on now.
He got beat by Ricky Burns, and he's been poor for a while. I just think that, you know, I think Lomachenko is not a heavy puncher. No. I don't think there'll be that much difference in power between the two. I think there'll be a difference in size, and he might be able to wear him down. And if he's able to get on the inside and he's able to dominate with Lomachenko's able to dominate with his rhythm, he wins, and he wins easy. But if he's not able to dominate with his rhythm, Lomachenko's in all sorts of problems. But he might still get the decision, but he'll be in all sorts of problems if he can't get on the inside and do that dancing around in the arc that he likes to do.
Only if Rigondo is still the same fighter he was several years ago, though, Tom.
Look, anytime I've seen Rigondo, even in like fights we think are mismatches, and you see him and he looks sharp as hell.
But
the one that got the no contest there, the one before, he looked razor sharp.
But
he's fighting against pretty exceptional, to be honest. He's fighting against someone who could possibly be, you know, in years to come, one of the best fighters that's ever been in the game.
I don't believe that. I think that's a bit of smoke up his arse, but I do think he's an elite fighter. But I think Rigondo is also elite.
I completely agree with that. But here's the thing, right? Rigondo, yeah, he's looked sharp in the last couple of fights. But when was the last time anybody saw him come out? Was it the first round? Jazza Dickens, did he break Jazza Dickens during the first round? The last fight was at the end of the first round. Everybody looked sharp in the first round, Tom. Come on. When was the last time?
I know, but they're sharp, and then there's like breaking a guy's jaw with the one shot you land, and then knocking a guy spark unconscious with the one shot you land. Like there's different levels of sharp. It's not just he's looking good. He actually just crease guys.
If you're throwing out Sam Eggington comparisons, you know, you're saying
no. I'm saying
you're saying Martinez is a certain level. I mean, Jazza Dickens.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to argue with you at all. I'm just saying that, like, you know, Rocky Martinez and trying to say, like, Rigondo is going to be, you know, susceptible to the same kind of things that Loma did, I just think is kind of madness. Like, you remember in that fight, Lomachenko
got some power and he can set his punches up. I didn't say that Rigo is susceptible to the same thing. Rigo's a much better fighter than Martinez. He's also a lot smaller. I just think I don't think it's even going to be close, to be completely honest.
But like the thing though is, Paul, is in that fight with Martinez, he bet the crap on Martinez for about 5 rounds before he dropped him and knocked him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He bet him every minute of every round.
Yeah.
And Martinez had nothing. And I just don't see the same thing replicated.
Yeah, he did. That's what he does. That's what Lomachenko does. He likes to he seems to like to showcase the skills, and he doesn't seem to like. Quite often you see him beating the shit out of somebody, and he looks like he could probably sit down on a few punches and knock them out, and he doesn't. He keeps beating the shit out of them. But when he wanted to, he knocked the guy out.
Well, I don't know. I just think the guy was bet up so much. The way I look at Lomachenko is that I don't think he's a power puncher, but I think he's able to overwhelm guys to the point where either they quit or if they're not good enough, he'll stop them. But he's been in fights with guys who he's kind of he's been on top of them, but they've gone the distance too. I don't think he just decided once to drop a guy and not ever. I just think that Roman Martinez was of such a lower level and he'd been beaten up so much that was very easy for Lomachenko to do it. I think that, if he's able to get in and dominate his style, he wins easy. But I don't think he's going to be able to dominate that style as easy as you guys think he will. That's just, I could be totally wrong, but I think Loma is the favourite. But I'm picking Rigo because I don't know why. I feel like he's going to do it. It's a kind of a field pick, but I could be totally wrong.
Great fight, anyway. That's for damn sure.
Big fight. I've got some breaking news for you guys.
Woo!
I know.
Is it a go-go related?
No.
Oh fuck.
Is it Jaman? Is it Takam's got a hand injury?
No. It's the return.
Damn.
Of one of the biggest names in British boxing.
Tyson Fury.
I'll give you a clue.
Prince Nazim Hamid's coming back to fight Butterbean.
I'll give you a clue. An Olympic amateur pedigree.
Audie Harrison.
No.
Amir Khan.
No.
Oh, David Price.
David Price.
Hey.
Returning December the 2nd at the Brentwood Centre on MTK's Pride and Glory show.
Oh, God.
No.
Fighting TBA.
Of course.
TBA.
I don't hear that about 2 weeks ago.
TBA must have made a few quid by now, don't you reckon?
Yeah, I know.
My favourite. I love the heavyweight TBA. He's my favourite.
Gossip, is that not out about 2 or 3 weeks ago? I heard that.
Oh, was it? Okay, sorry. Yeah. I'm just terribly behind the times, obviously. Apologies to everyone who thought I was about to announce, like an Amir Khan comeback fight against a huge opponent. No, it's David Price versus TVA at Brentwood. But there you go. Let me whiz around the panel. We've overrun. Let me whiz around the panel and see if anyone's got anything else to add in. Jet?
Nothing from my side.
Cheers, mate. Jay?
Nada.
Paul?
No.
Iris?
No, just a little tune for Paul.
Oh.
On that note, guys, thank you very, very much indeed for tuning in. 136 of you still with us. Thanks to everyone who stayed from start to finish. Thanks to all the one panel. Thanks to Jay. Thanks to Jet. Thanks to Paul. And sort of thanks to Iris Tom, I guess. For those
I've got ukulele here. Should we have a bit of a jam? Should we have a bit of a...
We can throw it off, yeah. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please take the time to hit the thumbs up button. Even if you're only watching this after it's been uploaded at a later date. If you want to see more, check out Jet's channel, which is the Boxing Discussions channel. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to mine. Aiming to break the 6,000 subscribers barrier this week with the big Joshua fight. Let's try and hit that limit. Other than that, I'll say good night, and I'll be back on with some videos tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Good night, lads.
Au revoir.
Slide.
Cheers, guys.